Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. We have a long meeting tonight, a long though exciting meeting. So I'm going to jump right in. So first of all is I wanted to give a brief overview regarding our agenda items. So what I'm going to do is bring up initially. I do have it up here. It's just wading through everything. Share. Bring up the. Well, we'll start here. Bring this part up with the study session agenda or study session agenda and report. So the first item that is on your agenda for this evening for the main meeting is 717 East 24th Street. Staff is recommending that you table this at this point. The reason being that their traffic study was just recently submitted. Brian White hasn't had a chance to look through it. Neither has Matt Hill, our traffic engineer consultant. And also, in addition to that, Vishal and his team are still working with Holland Rescue Mission to see if there is any possibility that Holland Rescue Mission might be able to adjust their driveway, which would then resolve the concerns that Brian has about the non-alignment on Waverly Avenue. So there's just a lot of things that are going on still with this one. And so we would just strongly recommend that you table it. Do you want any other information on that right now, or would you?
Is there going to be a presentation and are we going to comment, or are we just going to table it immediately?
No, you can do it however you'd like to do it. I mean, generally in these cases, we would still open a public hearing in case anyone is there to speak on the topic. And then you can definitely comment. I can give you a fuller presentation at that point. The applicant will also be there, so you can request a presentation from them.
Well, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just wondering what is the normal procedure and what would you like to see happen tonight? Because we do have kind of a full agenda also.
Well, certainly I think a public hearing is important to open again in case anyone is on the call for the public hearing.
Right.
And then keep the public hearing open as you have done before. And then it's really dependent on you all if you want, you know, I mean, I can give a brief presentation about the site, but it's up to you as to whether or not you want the applicant to speak. I guess it is the right of the applicant to speak, so they can speak. And then what's that?
We'll go through the normal procedure.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay, anything else on that one?
This is the one that we heard before.
Yeah.
It came to you for study session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. Did someone say that, or was that an echo? I guess it was me. Okay, so Unified Development Ordinance. So I wanted to provide a recommendation as to procedure process for this one, since we're not accustomed to it. This is just staff recommendation. However you end up wanting to handle it is up to you all as the Planning Commission. But our recommendation is we've prepared about a 15 to 20 minute PowerPoint presentation for everyone, which is a summary of the Udo staff report, the 28-page Udo staff report, and the many appendices that you received in your planning packet. So our recommendation would be for us to first do that, to make that presentation, then for you to open the public hearing, allowing people to speak up to 3 minutes per person. And then we would recommend for planning commissioners to discuss any of the public input items that you desire to discuss. If there's anything that you want to speak about, amongst yourselves, or if you have any questions for staff on any of the items that are presented by the public, that would be a good time for you to do that. Also, if there's any outstanding issues that planning commissioners themselves want to discuss with the group, or ask questions to staff for, that would be appropriate then. And then if changes are desired, and if the planning commission follows the staff recommendation, which is to recommend it for approval to city council, you can add those on as conditions of approval. So for instance, the items that we also want to discuss with you here, for instance, bicycle parking at dwelling units with 5+ units, then this could be, if you agree, to this recommending to add this language into Udo, at this point, you can then, whomever makes the vote can say conditioned on adding these criteria, or this language that was presented by staff, or if that language was presented by the public, then you can say, and adding whatever conditions that you want staff to change prior to this going to city council. Does that make sense?
Dave?
Did I hear you, Jenna, say 3 minutes and not 2 minutes when we were talking about public comments?
Yes. Because it's a full public hearing and it's about all of Udo, that's what
Yeah.
staff is recommending.
Whew.
I'll take it.
Okay, so anyone have any questions or other recommendations about the process? I just think it's important for us to have a handle on the expectations, I guess, of that process once we get there.
Looks
It's
good,
good to
Jenna.
me.
Thanks.
Fine.
Right. Okay, so in the last couple of weeks, we've realized that there's just a couple more items that we kind of forgot to put in. And so because we could wait and say, okay, well, we'll wait for it to go through and pass and then come back to it. We really would like to get these in if at all possible. So one of them, we're not really sure what happened because staff at least recalls that you approved this, but that that residential buildings with 5 or more units would be required to have 1 covered space, bicycle parking space per dwelling unit, plus 4 minimum for the public per building. In going through Udo in later iterations, for some reason it said that there was no requirement. And so I'm not sure why that was, but does anyone have any issue with us adding that at this point?
No, that sounds great.
Okay, so if this could be one of those items that if you recommend approval, then you would condition it based on, adding the bicycle parking at dwellings with 5+ units.
Just for clarification, Jenna, I remember having the conversations about this, but I don't remember the exact numbers. This was the recommendation that we came to at the time we had this discussion, correct?
Correct. This is taken right out of the report that Mark Cornelis had presented.
Okay.
And just for
Right,
some
I think-
reason, I'm not sure why it didn't get into the Udo.
And I'm not sure
Yeah,
either.
can you guys hear me all right? Am I coming through
Yeah.
at all? Okay. Trying out a new mic. So yeah, I think everything's great. Just the first row should include 4 family dwelling units. I think that was the intent.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, this is just the report. So actually, how we have it is 1 to 4 dwelling units. That's how, so this isn't actually how it is located, how it's written in Udo.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I get the point.
Yeah, I think the zeros, I don't believe appear in the chart at all because they're zeros. And then the rest, we'd add the multifamily.
Yeah. Again, in Udo, I mean, these are the same. So we don't have to distinguish between zone districts because they're, oh no, I'm sorry, this is 2 dwelling units, 1. Yeah, so we'll figure that out, but right now, if you look in Udo, this chart itself is not there. It just says no requirement for residential 1 to 4 units. And then the next one, it says 5+ units and it says no requirement. So that's what we need to.
So whomever is going to make that recommendation needs to make sure that they've got the correct chart information, I think is probably what Andrew was getting at there. So that if we're gonna do it with a condition, if we're gonna make a recommendation with a condition, we want to make sure we get that condition right.
Yeah, so the condition is just for it to, I mean, all you need to say is for there to be the requirements as were discussed to allow for bicycle parking for 5+ units in all zone districts. And then in terms of the 2 or 1 or whatever, that, you know, we'll just insert where those zone districts are in Udo.
Sounds good.
It doesn't need to be specific. It could just be general.
All right.
Okay, so then this came up because we recently got another balcony for you all that's going to come to you on May 11th in downtown. And this made me realize, shoot, you know, I don't think that we resolved this issue in Udo. And I looked back and sure enough, we didn't. So what staff is recommending is that going forward, that anything that is less than 500 square feet does not need to go to planning commission. It could just be done as an administrative review in all form-based code districts. So that would then include downtown and everywhere else, because right now, as it's written, everything in the form-based code goes to planning commission.
Okay. Do you need a formal vote on that one?
Again, that would be something that you would want to add. Well,
Sure.
not
But we can
require-
just discuss now here.
And I have a question about this one.
Mhm.
Does this one include additions of under 500 square feet or just new buildings, new structures?
Actually, I think that it should be additions as well. Yeah, I mean, so
Okay.
it says not to review applications for decks, balconies, ramps, or other smaller accessory structures, beds, etc. So, so good point, but yeah, it would be for all new structures or additions, anything that is 500 feet or less, square feet or less. I'm sorry, less than 500 square feet.
So when we're looking at
What-
ADUs that are half the size of a 900 square foot, then we don't need to see those, right?
Right, but there would be very few ADUs in form-based code district because generally it's not residential locations
Mm-hmm.
in general. But I mean, again, this is, you know, if you recall, some of you maybe a couple of years ago, we had to review in planning commission a cover for a ramp at the back of Warm Friend.
Yep.
So, you know, that's something that we can do administratively easily, doesn't need to take up your time and certainly doesn't need, you know, to take up the bureaucracy, I guess, for, you know, the applicant as well.
I think the
So,
same
and then like
concept,
another
not to slow
example,
down the process for people to build a ramp for a deck. Yeah, I agree. It makes good sense.
Right.
right,
You know,
Yeah,
I
I-
can-
it will be reviewed, but it can be reviewed administratively easily without needing to go to planning commission.
Can you imagine any structures that are less than 500 square feet that could become controversial at all?
I
mean,
can't, except that even if that were the case, you know, it would still be noticed out to the 300-foot distance like any other administrative review application is. So if there is some type of controversy, then someone can request it to go to planning.
Oh, they can, okay.
They
All
can
right.
request it, yeah,
Yeah, I'm good with this then.
okay. Great, anyone else?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it makes sense to change it to like specific things like decks and balconies and ramps. Because you can fit a whole apartment in under 500 square feet if you're adding on to a building. But if we feel fine with admin covering that, then I'm fine with it too.
Yeah, my recommendation again would, if not 500 square feet, then some other square footage. But my recommendation would just to have it be flat out, because otherwise it'll be really cumbersome in the ordinance itself as to how to explain that.
Okay.
But again, yes, it will, you know, we will look at it administratively to make sure that, you know, everything makes sense.
Does accessory structure make you more comfortable, Andrew?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking, oh, go ahead, Nathan, sorry.
No, I'm just curious as to if everybody else is comfortable with the fact that the language is worded right, so that the only things under 500 square feet that are being administratively reviewed are accessory structures. Because that's the way I read it. I'm just curious if everybody else was reading it that same way, because that makes me more comfortable.
Is that the intention, Jenna?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had, Mark Vanderploeg, would you call balconies and ramps accessory structures?
No, I would say that's probably in addition. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
But
so
what if we moved it, I've changed the square footage to the, what's our limit on square footage for a living space? I can't remember if it was 350 or 300.
It's the
well, for an
minimum.
apartment, it's 300, but for a structure, for a standalone structure, it's 500.
Okay,
For what it's worth, currently in the current draft of Udo, any addition in the non-downtown form-based sub-districts would be administrative anyway. So just to give clarity of what we're talking about with additions, it would be, the change would be to the downtown ones, which would currently require to go to planning commission.
I see.
Sure.
I'm good.
But also, if a business wants to put
Yeah.
up a small shed, you know, is that something that needs to go to planning commission?
I don't want it to take longer for them or us, unless they really want us to review it.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Me too.
So now, are we gonna then use the wording that you've suggested in the documents that were sent?
I mean, that's why I was just kind of saying anything, you know, I wasn't saying an addition or an accessory structure necessarily. This was descriptive language, but just basically form-based code structures, period, that are less than 500 square feet need not go to planning commission for review. So again,
So take out the word accessory.
Or are you
this is
saying,
what it would
Jenna,
be.
you're not
This
going
is
to
what
include
the
that
standard would
descriptive
be,
language?
just this.
Yeah,
So do you want to say form-based code, structures and or additions of under 500 square feet or something like that? Because what you got in bold there, that's the actual ordinance language, is it not, Jenna? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm proposing, yeah. I
Yeah.
just don't know that structures or additions need to be, I mean, it doesn't say new. I mean, basically, we have a table, we have tables in Udo in Article 12. And it says what the process is for every approval type or application type. So this would be just in those areas, it would say if it's less than 500 square feet, then it doesn't have to go to planning commission. So it's not actually written ordinance language because it's in the form of a table. But it's basically saying what the concept is that we would then change.
I actually have that page up if you want me to share it, if that would help.
Sure.
Or I'd need permission to do that.
There you go.
Thank you. Hang on, where did it go?
And sorry guys, for some reason my video is not working. The only way is for me to shut down and come back in. So
Okay.
I'm here. It's like
So it would be this page and the next page that would change. And as you can see right now, it says, this is zone districts, FWT, WGT, NDT, CDT, EDT, and CENT. And right now it says new buildings or additions, all of them. Recommendation by administrative review staff, final determination by planning commission. And then it says accessory buildings, 200 square feet or less, zoning administrator, over 200 square feet, administrative review staff. So how this would be edited is this row would change to new buildings or additions over 500 square feet, and the rest would stay the same. And then there'd be a new row in here saying new buildings or additions under 500 square feet, and it would just say administrative review staff, final determination. And then in the accessory buildings row here, this box would stay the same. This box would say 200 to 500 square feet, and this box would say over 500 square feet.
Like it.
Yep, that looks good.
And then for the rest of form-based code, it'd be slightly different. We'd add this would say new buildings over 500 square feet. We'd add a new row, new buildings under 500 square feet that would say final determination under administrative review staff. So hopefully that helps clarify it a little bit.
Mhm.
Yep.
yeah. I like
Yeah,
that.
I'm good with that.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay,
No, thank you, Chris.
so again, if that could, if someone would add that in the motion. Okay, so our noise assessment tool, StratCat is what I call it. I'm not sure if that's actually what it's called. But this is that HUD tool that we introduced a couple of years ago, which allows for us to enter, or for us to have architects enter a bunch of different specifications about the window types, the door type, the wall types, to make sure that it's compatible with what HUD believes is like the good standard for eliminating noise inside of buildings. So we have put this into the zoning ordinance, basically saying that it's a requirement now into Udo, whereas right now it's just something that's highly desirable. So initially, based on some recommendations from McKenna, we had put in decibel units. So basically, when they go through that tool online, they have to enter a decibel, a noise decibel for the roads outside. So basically what we realized is that without telling them what decibel level they need to put in, they could put in 40, and then, yeah, their windows and walls and everything are going to be in compliance. But is that the actual decibel, noise decibel level on the ground outside of their apartment on the fronting streets? So we realized that we really needed to provide them with a number in order for them to input something that we think is compatible with the noise of the streets. So we, as you can see in this chart, we originally put, some of them up at 80 decibels, others of them down at 50. When I proposed this actually to Vishal Aurora, Magnus Capital's architect, and said, please use 80, since their project is on Waverly, he came back and he said that, you know, that he's worked on these other projects that have required them to put in a decibel point, and did these comparisons saying, well, along the suburban street in Illinois, they put in 67 decibels. Along I-75 in Detroit, 74 decibels. So it came to our attention that while that may be found as a, you know, general basic theory, maybe, in terms of the decibels that we should use, it's not actually consistent with kind of the practice. So we'd like to make the practice and, you know, our standards more compatible. And so this is what I'm proposing based on what I received from Vishal's architect in terms of what he has done in practice. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Does this, or do the new standards make this more restrictive?
It makes it a little bit less restrictive because right here, for instance, they're saying, you know, we said, let's take Waverly Avenue. Let's take this development as an example. So I told them to put 80 decibels in, which means that it's really loud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that it's even louder than in East Chicago, Indiana, located near an expressway and train tracks, where they put 78 decibels, or they found that that was 78 decibels, right? So they would, the threshold for them meeting the 80 decibel unit would be higher than just needing to meet a 70 decibel unit. Though it seems as though in practice, it's more aligned with what is being used. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So-
My one question is that I'm concerned about the relying on one architect or a group of architects using this data from their own personal experience. There is a ton of standards around about decibel levels in different, you know, residential areas and big cities versus small cities. There, you know, FHWA has published a lot because a lot of the noise is traffic. And so they have a lot of experience with setting decibel levels standards also. And so I don't know if you're comfortable using standards that you've been given from one architect with a very limited database in order to set the standards for the city of Holland.
Okay, so I mean, personally, I'm comfortable with it because it's only a 10-point difference.
Yeah, but you know, a 10-point difference, it's a logarithmic scale. And so it's actually exponential. And so a 10-point difference is a huge difference. It's not 10% or 8%. It's more like 50%. And so you're adjusting things that are logarithmic and not linear. And so it can have a monumental difference. And so I'm leery of using a limited database for setting standards like this for our city. That's my concern. I don't know where you got the first set of standards from, but so that's just a comment I have about it.
Those came from HUD, but we then had to apply the sort of general HUD guidance to specific places in Holland, right? And we didn't like go out with a decibel meter and measure traffic on Waverly Road, but it was like busy suburban corridor, you know, this is what we recommend. So that's where we got the initial ones. So I don't personally have an objection to Jenna's reduction, but yeah, it should be understood that it is a reduction. It makes it less intensive, and therefore means the building will be built to a lesser sound prevention quality.
So I have a concern about that because I do think that there are corridors in Holland that have a lot of loud impact on residential properties that are being proposed for example, River Avenue, in the near downtown area. That corridor is really heavily trafficked and it's loud, and we're reducing the standard there by 10 decibels, which is probably a very large percentage. And, you know, we did have the experience of that developer adjusting his materials that he was using in his windows and doors and the outer, the composition of his walls, because it did exceed the standard and he had to adjust and make things better in that building. So I feel like we're proposing something at the last minute that doesn't have a sound scientific basis to it, if we're just using a database that one architect has given us. I do think there's a lot more data out there that you could borrow from, but you have already chosen a source, HUD, that has stood up to a lot of scrutiny.
So my knowledge of noise levels here, so actually I think what Jen is showing is the recommended change is going to be more stringent. So the lower the number, the quieter it is, and the higher the number, the louder it is.
Yeah, but this is the decibel that's of the traffic.
Right. So, but these would be maximum allowable decibels allowed, not minimum, would they?
Well, they're what you enter into the strat cat, however you pronounce it, tool, and then it recommends building materials. So that if you put in a higher number, it's going to recommend higher quality building materials or more expensive, more intensive building materials.
Correct.
So it is a lessening of the standard by moving from 80 to 70. You're making it easier to meet the standard with probably lesser quality materials. Isn't that correct? Isn't that how the model works?
Yes.
Okay.
So then in some areas though, we're making it more strict. So the last, like the high HDR and GMU zone districts on corridors goes from 50 to 70.
Yeah. And I don't understand that.
Yeah, so initially, you know, I mean, looking at where HDR and GMU is, I think that needs to go up. So that's on East 16th.
Yeah, but
So-
really,
Yeah.
are we
and
going
24th, so I think it was a mistake initially.
Well, I think to clarify where that came from, I think we have a list of streets at the very top, right? River, Michigan, 31, Waverly, 7th, 9th, right? And so GMU and HDR fall under, 31, Waverly. That would override being in the HDR district and require you to go all the way up to the 81. But as Jenna just pointed out, there's streets that HDR and GMU are on that are missing from that list, like 16th. So I think that makes sense. I think that was a good catch by Jenna and Mark here.
So I don't want to be a stick in the mud here, but I just Googled decibel level, and the higher the number, the louder.
Yeah.
The louder the decibel is. So I guess I'm confused. Like this first one here, CMU and Is Zone districts. If we're originally recommending 80.
Okay, Mark, can I explain it? Can I explain it better?
Well, yeah. If everybody
so
else
there's
has
this
clarity,
tool.
I'm fine. I don't need to.
I'm with you, Mark.
Let me explain it then, please. So there's this tool that is online.
Yep,
and
I've
it
heard all
asks-
about StratCat. I just don't know about the decibel levels.
Okay, so
though.
one of the questions is for them to put in the decibel level of the traffic, the noise that the traffic is making outside of their building. So we were saying, okay, initially, up until now, we've said, you figure out what that decibel level is and you put it in. But what occurred to us is that they could be saying, there's barely any noise outside the street on River Avenue, so I'm going to put in a 30. I don't really know the area. I'm going to put in a 30 decibel unit. Well, then their windows and their walls and the quality and everything is all going to get passed because 30 is barely any noise, right? So then what we said is, okay, we need to determine what decibel metric they need to put into the tool because we know what how loud our roads are. Basically without going out there and doing a noise counter. So So we need to give them the instruction as to what unit they put into the tool. So initially, Chris
Okay.
did research on it. He found that these are standards. He, assessed them based on, basically made a hypothesis as to what, they should be in terms of our individual streets and zone districts. In further review of that, especially when I said to an applicant, I said, okay, use 80 for Waverly Avenue. They came back and they said, well, actually, we don't think that 80 is,
Realistic.
realistic. Thank you. Because we have all these other projects that we've used in these other cities, located near an expressway and train tracks. They said that it was okay to use 78. So why on Waverly Avenue should we be using 80? So based on
okay.
that is why we're making this next recommendation. Now, if you don't think, if Planning Commission wants us to do some more research on it, we absolutely can. For right now, we can just put this, we can adopt it into Udo as is and come back to it at a later point. That's fine. My concern is just telling another applicant on, Waverly Avenue, let's say, nope, you need to use an 80 point decibel, and them saying, what, that's not reasonable based on what we've done in the past. Because I don't know really anything about noise levels. I'm not a, engineer or an architect. I'm just basing it off of the data that we've received.
Okay, so all these numbers really then are saying these are data entry numbers. So when somebody does the StratCat thing, then they're going to use on the first line item there, they're going to input 70 instead of 80.
Yes.
And I'm tracking with you now. So this is not saying, okay, at the final analysis of the StratCat thing, if it comes in at 70 or higher or whatever, that's not allowed. This is just a data entry to use to actually use the tool.
Exactly.
I'm tracking with you now. Okay.
It's more important than that. It is a data point, but it's the data point that it's their basic assumption of the noise level outside of their building. It's not just any old number. It's the number that they have to use in order to adjust the building, the quality of building materials that will protect the inhabitants of those buildings from noise. And so it's a very important number because it's the starting point. It keeps them from going out and measuring the noise levels on the street. It gives them a much easier way to do it. And I don't mind using HUD, but because you can defend your standards with HUD data, but you can't, I don't see how you're going to defend yours from the next person that comes in and said, well, you're just using data that an architect gave you from on a street in Illinois. I mean, that's not right. Especially there's so much data out there. I mean, you could look at other places if you want to. Every state has different standards. There's highway data, there's city data, there's a lot of stuff. But just to take this as a given because this particular architectural group use these in their projects, I just don't think that's the right thing for the Planning Commission to accept at this point. And I'm all in favor. I mean, the StratCat is a good tool for us to use. I'm all in favor of it. I just want to make sure we have a defensible standard.
And I have one question also, and it's the distance. I can see if you're a half a mile from I-75, it's only 74. But is the StratCat have a distance input as well?
No.
They're asking though what the nearest street is, what the decibel level of the nearest street is. So whatever that nearest street is what you would put it in for.
Yeah, so it's a very broad measure. It's not a very sensitive measure to the actual conditions on the road, which does take into account distance. But this it doesn't. This is much broader and simpler and actually cruder, but it works generally to protect residents inside buildings. So
Mark, Jenna, or Chris, maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't. How much does it cost to have one of these analysis done? I mean, we're looking at nine different locations within the city.
It's free.
Pardon me?
It's free.
why don't we have it done for each one of these areas periodically? Because it's going to change over time. These are numbers we don't necessarily have to make up. These are numbers that we can actually generate. These are locations that we can test and that we can plug in numbers that are actual rather than ones that we're trying to extrapolate from HUD data or from developers in other locations.
It's not free to go out and measure the noise.
Right, it's
Yeah.
not free to
Okay,
measure.
that's
And
what I
that
was
might be
getting
worth
at.
it to the city to do that.
Yeah.
But
I don't
Unless
know
we
how
have
much
unless we have a noise measurement tool.
There are
DPW
hand
might.
measurement tools. There's a lot of stuff out there that can do this.
The sound level meters cost $500 to $1,000 each.
Again, we
I
might
thought they
have
cost
one.
like 20 bucks.
We might have one somewhere in the city. I mean, in terms of, owned by the government.
Yeah. I mean,
So
if
we
we,
absolutely can go and do that.
because if we want to put a number in there for our developers to make it easier for them to calculate these formulas, we've got the ability to do this. We don't necessarily have to make guesses or extrapolate the data. We can generate the data. And we can do it, if we're doing it, we can do it at times that are reasonable times to do it. If I'm going to go out at Waverly at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to generate a whole lot of noise. But if I'm doing it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to generate a whole lot more.
And we would do it at peak hour.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying, that we can generate a standard. Again, I don't know if that's a feasible thing for us to do. It's within the realm of possibility. I just don't know whether it's cost effective for us to do that.
Yeah, and my feeling is it's a pretty complex issue. So to make like a broad change, when it sounds like we need to go deeper into it, might make sense just to pass it as is and then dive into this issue a little deeper on why we're making the changes, look at, purchasing one of these. I kind of think it does make sense. What is real time in our area versus, kind of doing this broad sweeping change right now.
Yeah, so I mean, I think actually what I would recommend is instead of even having a chart, instead of even having any numbers in Udo, we just reference as indicated in the most updated street decibel measurement policy. And then we write something in addition to this where we do go out and measure the numbers. And then if they do need to be updated, then we can update it outside of Udo easily. Because what we're providing here really hasn't been tested either. I mean, this isn't something that's currently in our zoning ordinance, the 80, all these 80s. This is something that, was done more theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, from the review that I've done recently about these numbers, is that our current standard is quite high. There's 80 is higher than I have seen in other data sets. And so I too don't think that it's a very accurate set to work from, but it does have a basis that we can defend ourselves with, which is it's a HUD standard. But I
It's a
think
HUD standard, but it was extrapolated to meet our roads. So it was really done as a educated guess by our consultant.
I think that what you're saying makes some sense, because then we could go back to what we were doing, which is, but still requiring there be a stray cat, not just letting them get off the hook of not doing it, requiring it, and then we can review what decibel level they choose to use. In the meantime, we can look at try to generate our own data, or look at a better set of data that other cities of our size are using. That would all make sense to me.
And then again, if we do some measurements, then we could have a policy on it. And when they say, I need something for this, to enter based on your policy, what is it? We provide them the policy at that point.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I do like the idea of including it in the ordinance itself. As someone who digs into ordinances when designing things for their townships or municipalities, I just you have to go through all these documents and you're just making it a pain. And the idea of the UDO is to be unified. It's in the name. So to keep it all in one document, I think makes a lot of sense.
So what are you saying?
Saying the opposite of what.
We adopt
Yeah.
either set of numbers and then we revise them later
Oh, okay.
with what we measure. Yeah.
But that revision is going to take council action, where I think what Jen is suggesting is that policy doesn't require that council action. And these numbers are going to change over time. You know, if we get a whole lot of electric cars, which I know that Andrew would really like to see along Waverly Road,
Sure.
you know, those generally are quieter than big pickup trucks are. That hopefully these levels will go down over time. And I'd like to see the Udo reference that or reflect that. And if we can do that with policy, and again, I don't know if it's feasible or affordable for us to do the testing and put it in there, but I'd rather give ourselves the opportunity to be able to do that rather than pick an arbitrary set of numbers. And I know these are based on HUD, but Jenna, you're right, they're based on HUD, but we've extrapolated HUD data to try to shoehorn it into particular locations in our community. And there's a whole lot of, I'm missing my word there. That's not scientific. You know, that's somebody's interpretation of, oh, that standard I think meets with this street, which you guys may be right on the mark, but it becomes, as Fred said, hard to defend that, where if we've got a way to be able to say, hey, we measure those and we measure them on an annual basis or every 3 years or every 5 years, then we've got a way to be able to say, no, this is actual data. And I'd love to be able to have that kind of flexibility in the document. And gee, with electronic documents, not that hard to update those numbers.
Right, what I'm thinking is you just hyperlink to, whatever the most recent document is in the Udo. And then it's living, it's breathing, it's real world information.
Yeah, as long as it's easy to find, I'm fine with that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I would agree, because I'm looking at the numbers from the other ones. They're not round numbers on the whole, so it looks like they were used at some point from 78, 74, 67. So someone probably did measure. My only concern in the interim between now, today, and being able to get these data points, I'm just concerned that an applicant will go in there and put in 30 or 40. I mean, yeah, we can criticize, but if we don't give a measure up front, then we're telling them you have to wait another month to resubmit if you put in the wrong point. So is there a way we can do a minimum up front and say we want you really to do a 50 or a 40, and then kind of using that as a baseline in the interim?
I think that we can do something with this before Udo is adopted. And right now, until Udo is adopted, it's not either here or there, because right now in our current zoning ordinance, it's not even mentioned. It's just a recommended policy. So I think that we could definitely, work on this and have something up as a policy before Udo is adopted.
I think that's a great idea. And if that's the case, then I would just stick with what we have under the Udo standards right now and not go to the other one, because it's stricter. And it's easier to lessen the requirement than it is to add the requirement.
Well, again, I think that, referencing a policy and putting a hyperlink there in Udo would be good. So we can, if you direct us to edit it to, just reference a policy that we have and put in a hyperlink, then we can make that change. And then the hyperlink we can edit subsequently because it's not actually part of Udo.
I see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I like that idea.
Yep, I think that makes sense.
Great. So again, if someone makes a approval motion, please have that as a condition of the approval. Okay, so last one. So this is what Jennifer Owens actually brought up to us at our last meeting at the end of the meeting. And I did a little bit more digging, talked with the attorney for Padnas to better understand what this request was about. They sent two letters to you. One was based on the waterfront. They're concerned with the waterfront overlay district as is written. their other concern was about changing this property here to CDT, Central Downtown Form-Based Code, from its existing industrial zone district. Specifically, they use this site for their stormwater management. This building is an industrial building that works for that. Their concern is that although they are aware that they can continue use with it, no problem. If they do ever need to do an expansion of it, it would be increasing the non-conforming use, therefore they wouldn't be able to do the expansion. And we want to make it possible that they can do, modify this building or whatever else they need on the site to best suit, their use. So that it's, just across the street from this little access lane into Padnes. Staff would recommend that we do consider going back and not rezoning it for those reasons.
That makes sense. I don't want to make bad neighbors of them, like for us and them, so.
Does that then need to happen when we make the motion to approve the document?
Yes, because this would be changing the zoning map.
Makes sense to me.
Good with that.
Okay, great. So we have about 8 minutes until we start the meeting. Does anyone want to take a break or do you
Yes.
want? Okay,
I'd like to take a break.
Take a break.
okay. So we'll see you back here. shortly.
You're wearing pajama pants, then put your camera somewhere else. Like,
I have to go fill my beer glass.
don't show us the
I can try to
glass.
get my,
No, it's a beer glass. It's full of water.
okay.
Jenna, while we're sitting here, I'll get you mock-ups of the document revisions to reflect each of those and anything else that comes up tonight. Probably Thursday unless you need it sooner, because I'm in meetings all day tomorrow. And that way we'll be on the same page before we change the actual document.
Yeah.
And on the
And
map
it
one, I think we're gonna
also
have
has
to,
it also depends though if they do recommend approval.
that's true, yeah.
So we can.
Not to get ahead of ourselves, but just
Right.
as a process. And we'll have to figure out exactly which maps will have to be updated for the 164 West 7th.
Yeah.
Because I think
It'll
that
be
appears on a
about
number of
50
maps.
of them.
Yeah, which is
Actually,
fine.
all three of them.
Yeah.
Okay, I will be right back.
I was going to say, if Fred's on, I can continue describing what's in each.
What's in your jars?
There you go. That's black beans. That's red lentils. That's green lentils. It looks like buckwheat. No, that's bran. There's cracked wheat next to it. This one, everybody can identify this one.
Maybe not on a teeny tiny little screen. What is it? Is it popcorn?
Hey,
I actually have, Dave, I've got a spreadsheet I've been using where I've been keeping track of which jars are in which place.
Yeah.
Like, I change the lines on the spreadsheet, gives me something extra to do during the meeting because I like to multitask. So if you'd like a copy of that spreadsheet, I'll be happy to send it to you.
Yeah.
You have too much time on your hands.
I thought one of those had some of those green nuggets in it. The stuff that was legally made legal in Michigan recently.
Oh, you mean the Truples?
The little green nuggets.
The little gummy bears.
Hey, Mallory.
The little fuzzy ones.
Hmm. Oh. Notice I'm ignoring you.
Sorry, yes.
No, sorry. I'm getting, obviously, because I'm set up to share my screen, I'm getting notifications when people are in the waiting room. But
That's
I
weird.
just kind of wanted to confirm that I should just ignore those because that you're in charge of that.
Yeah, except for I'm not getting those. So that's
Oh, okay.
Well, you guys have to do the old switcheroo.
Yeah,
So
let's fix this. It
Rick,
says
let me know-
co-host by me and Jenna and host by Mallory, so that should be right.
yeah, it should be.
Can just let them in and we can figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I have no issue hitting admit. I just didn't want to.
I don't see anyone either. Well, now I see
I
someone.
know, I've
It's
got one.
Veronica Lehman. Does everyone else see there?
Yep.
Mallory, do you see her?
Yep, I let her in. So.
Okay. Okay, so maybe it is working now.
Weird.
Well, let's see. Oh, there's below the pasta, you have actually white sugar in those two. And then there's, what do you call that? Yeah. Some other
That's a powdered sugar, isn't it, Dave? That's not granular, that's powdered, right?
in the corner.
Yeah.
This is granular. That's oh, there's another one. What's the sort of little round balls that go on? It's just sugar. Anyway.
Mallory, did we get Andrew to switch his microphone?
No, I don't think so. Let me.
Because the microphone is extra sensitive.
Oh, super sensitive.
There we
It's
go.
totally distracting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
Oh, what is this?
Your,
Return the-
your microphone is very sensitive. It's really distracting.
Is it actually? Should I try to change it?
Yes, it is actually. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll play around.
Thank you.
We heard every touching of paper and motion of your chair.
You can hear. I
Oh,
don't know,
okay.
can you hear this?
Mm,
I mean,
No.
we were doing every piece of paper that was sliding across the piece of paper. I just assumed.
Yeah, I was having trouble with my webcam mic, which is why I'm on this guy. Maybe I can make it work.
Hey, Dave, your background's so good. I thought it was a Zoom fake background. I didn't even know that that was real. That's
He's in
really
a-
cool. Mhm.
That's why it's been fun because my wife spends, well, when she's working from home, we'll spend hours in meetings. And it's just been a lovely background for that.
Are you in your pantry?
Actually, this is, yeah, in the back corner, when you come in the back door, literally is right in front of you there.
Hmm.
And let's see, it's probably got built in '84, yeah, back a few years ago.
Just a couple.
Back in there's probably some people on this call who remember when there were so many food co-ops in town.
Hmm.
In other words, there were buying clubs, 40 members each.
In the early 80s.
Yeah, probably, yeah,
That's when I was born.
I understand.
Okay.
I know people your age whose parents were members,
Oh, probably.
live in your neighborhood.
Hey, folks, I got a decibel reader right here.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah. So Dave, your voice right there was clocking in at anywhere from 67 to 70 decibels. Brooks was like 57 to 60 decibels. So I think there's a gender difference here.
Depends on how we're talking, I
I
guess.
get when you holding
We
it
should
right
all
up-
just test we'll just start talking, Mark, and then you can test us all.
Exactly. So
next
we-
time
we-
you go- next time you go to the Park Theater for a concert.
so we actually invested in a decibel meter. Oh God, 10 years ago or so when we were going to have a gun range, wanted an indoor
Right.
gun range, wanted to go into Holland Heights, and it never ended up getting approved. But so we had this for various reasons.
We even took a field trip out to the one in
Yeah,
Was it Wyoming
I think it's Wyoming.
on division?
Yep,
Silver Bullet or no?
yep.
Great. So I nominate Mark to go out to all of the streets and measure the road.
Good idea.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's 5 o'clock.
Hey,
Next-
I'll
next
do that, but
sunny
I'm gonna
day.
need an assistant, Jenna.
Okay.
I'll help you, Mark.
Hey,
All right.
on the next sunny day, just put your chair out there on the steps in the city hall.
That sounds good.
And
All right,
when
it's
those,
5. Is everybody back?
It's not the electric cars I worry about. It's the steel haulers coming, the 3 or 4 trucks that go by daily.
Dave,
Yes?
you're done.
Why, are you starting?
Yes, it's 5 o'clock.
Is
Everybody,
Luis
and Mallory-
back? I don't-
He's in the
I don't
waiting
see
room.
Luis.
He's in the
just-
waiting room.
I just let him in.
You did. Okay,
Otherwise, the waiting room is empty.
it is. Okay.
Okay, if you remember though, Brooke, to do the call to order with the, voice roll call thing.
Yeah. We will do that.
Great.
All right. Is Luis is in?
Yes.
He's in, but he doesn't have audio yet.
Okay. There it is, connecting. Okay, it's waiting. Luis, once you can hear us, I don't want to do a roll call till he can.
I think Andy needs to be unmuted too.
Andy, we have to hear from you. Oh, there's Luis.
Thanks.
Video's working.
Yep. Got booted off for some reason. Had to rejoin, sorry.
That's okay.
Don't know
Technology.
What happened? Unstable internet.
Yahoo!
City, what the heck?
Yahoo!
I know. I see Luis too. We're connecting to audio, so.
Hey, I think everyone's good.
All right. Welcome, everybody from the public and the Planning Commission to the April 13th Planning Commission meeting, 2021. We need a call to order, and we will do a roll call to order. That will be Mallory.
Ready. All right, Lozano,
Luis Lozano, present and telecasting from Holland, Michigan.
Owens,
Jennifer Owens present, teleconferencing from Holland, Michigan.
Blunt,
Andrew Blunt is present and attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
Raymond,
Lynn Raymond is present and teleconferencing from Holland, Michigan.
Kenyon,
Andy Kenyon is present and attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
Fox,
Nathan Box is present and attending via teleconference from beautiful Holland, Michigan.
DeBlock,
Block is present and attending via teleconference from Holland, Michigan.
Van Antwerp,
Brett Van Antwerp is present and teleconferencing from Holland, Michigan.
and Anderson.
Brooke Anderson is present and teleconferencing from Holland, Michigan.
That's
All
everyone.
right. Thank you, Mallory, for that. And next item is approval of the minutes for March 9, 2021 and March 23, 2021 meetings.
I move that we approve the minutes from the March 9, 2021 and March 23, 2021 meetings.
And I will second that.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? No opposed. Okay. Communications from the audience for items that are not listed as a public hearing on the agenda can speak now. I see none. These are for items that are not.
Burns. There's a Lynn Burns with her hands up.
I just
Yeah,
want to
these are
make sure that
items that are
everybody
not
knows
listed
that
on the
at the item with the asterisk is going to have a public hearing. So items A and B under new business will have a time to talk. But Lynn, we will unmute you a minute if there's anything you'd like to speak to that's not listed on the agenda. Mallory will unmute you a minute. There we go, Lynn. Are you
Hi,
speaking to items that are not listed on the agenda?
is this, so the UDO public hearing meeting, is as far as converting the single family homes, those issues?
The Udo public hearing will be in a few minutes.
That's when I should speak then?
Yeah, if you want to speak to the Udo. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right. New business. 717 East 24th Street, the multifamily and mixed use community. Applicant is Vishal Arora, Magnus Capital Partners. So Jenna, would you like to do a short presentation on this one? And then we will talk to the applicant.
Yes, I would. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So the applicant has submitted a very exciting project proposal. It is proposing 191, I believe, apartments.
That's right.
And constructed in these 4 different residential buildings, as well as 2 commercial buildings that would be fronting Waverly Road here. They are also proposing a lot of non-motorized transportation infrastructure, as well as a great product in terms of trees and landscaping, etc. At this time, however, staff is recommending that Planning Commission table the vote until its May 11th meeting. The reason for this is that the traffic study, which was required, was only submitted late last week and hasn't had a chance yet to be reviewed by our city engineer thoroughly or by our traffic consultant. There's also, some talk in terms of working with adjacent property owners for some traffic, to resolve some traffic concerns that the engineer has already highlighted to them. Right here, I'm trying to just bring up the renderings because they are quite exciting to us. Let's see if I can find them in here. So for those reasons, we are requesting that it be tabled. Also, our Holland Board of Public Works and Fire Department folks, they had decided to wait on providing their feedback until some of the engineering issues were resolved. Therefore, we just don't have a complete review at this point. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing the renderings. Perhaps Vishal might have them available to show as he presents.
Okay. Shall we hear from the applicant now, Jenna?
Certainly.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. This is Vishal here. Jenna, you put me on the spot. I'm looking for those renderings, so just bear with me.
It's okay if you want to just speak, and I can find them.
Sure, and my comments will be brief. I know you guys have a long agenda this evening, so I'll just make a couple of quick summary comments. The first is we remain excited about the project. I think we've had a really good dialogue with the staff so far, as well as now some of the neighbors, pro forma Rest Haven, I guess, to the east, and then HRC, of course, across Waverly to figure out that traffic issue or question that's on the table there. So we're excited. I think we have no objection of tabling this until the next meeting to allow those outstanding items to be resolved. Our process at this hour, we're in the middle of April. By the middle of May, we will need to make an update to our application to MISTA, at which point we hope to have either an approval on site plan, or at least have a thorough understanding of where the site plan approval process is for that application update. At the same time, which I know is not for this body, but there is also a parallel update we'll need to provide to MISTA with respect to the pilot that we're engaged in discussions with as well with the city. The other thing to note, which I believe the staff report indicates or alludes to, is there is a power pole relocation effort that is part of this site, as the current consumer poles bisect the site pretty much cleanly across from north to south, running east to west. We have reached out to consumers and are working through what will inevitably be a long lead time and costly lead time exercise to get those out of the way so that we can do execute on the development. But par for the course, nothing out of the ordinary. I just want to give everyone an update that we are diligently pursuing all open items right now, as we eventually seek your approval for the project in front of you. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Does anyone?
So I did locate the renderings here. The entrance, the primary entrance off of Waverly Avenue, this nice landscape strip area, pedestrian area that extends to the east of the, or to the eastern portion of the site. And then a playground right here. They've also added covered parking, bicycle parking spaces at every building, which is a wonderful amenity for their residents. So there's this one, and then I wanted to show you this one as well. Kind of goes into the site a little bit more. And then you can see the rendering that's, you know, kind of the view from Waverly Avenue. So again, we have worked very closely with Vishal. We're very excited about this project. Though, like we said, you know, for, you know, it is a very large project, you know, and we want to make sure that we have it right, as Vishal, you know, does as well. So that's the purpose of the tabling motion or recommendation, I should say.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from commission members?
Yeah, I got one comment. There was a public comment about max bus routes and and access to housing. It looks like the 6 route goes past this development, but it doesn't stop. So if we could coordinate that so it does, that'd be nice.
We would love that. That'd be fantastic for 100 obvious reasons. I believe the stop currently is a bit north in front of GVSU, so it wouldn't presumably be too tough to integrate something, but I appreciate the comment, and we would look forward to working with Max and yourselves to see that happen.
Sure.
Great. Any other questions for the applicant? No? Okay. At this time, we will open a public hearing, correct, Jenna?
Correct.
All right. We will open a public hearing on this item. And I see one digitally hand raised by Dale Hoskins. So Mallory will unmute you. There you go, Dale.
Thank you. This will be quick. I'm just looking at it, and is this in what's going to be called the Greenfield Mixed Use Zone? And will it meet the standards of the Udo if it's passed the way it is? I'm just asking that because I'm kind of curious. What do you do for these nice developments that are between the old and the new?
Good question. Is that your whole comment, Dale?
Well, it's a question, I guess. If this is public comment and not question time, then.
No, I meant.
Yeah, that's my question.
If you want us to answer it, then is this everything you wanted to say about this item?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand your process a little better. So is this Greenfield mixed use, and does it meet the requirements of Udo?
Okay.
Sounds like a good project. I'm just curious about how you handle it from a zoning perspective.
That's a good question.
Would you like me to respond to that, Brooke?
Yes.
So this site is already zoned PUD, planned unit development. So planned unit developments have a little bit of a different process, where it's basically that we work just very closely in a partnership in order to get the standards to where the city deems desirable, and where the applicant wants to see them. Having said that, with all PUDs, lately, we have been really encouraging, stressing the desire for them to meet whatever the zone district is that is proposed for Udo to the greatest extent possible. And so certainly Vishal has worked with us on that, and in order to meet the surrounding Greenfield mixed use zone district standards. So specifically the distance between buildings and the internal streets is required to be between 15 and 25 feet. And they're right there in that, which was not originally proposed for all of the buildings. And that is something that we worked with them on. So again, basically the short answer is that we work as closely as possible with planned unit developments to meet the standards of the vicinity.
Jenna. The public hearing is still open on this item. If anyone would like to speak on it. Okay, looks good. Jenna, did you say we need to procedurally leave this public hearing open?
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Okay.
Christine's here, but she might leave, but she's not going to set the alarm or anything, and the doors are locked.
Okay. Do we need to motion on that or no?
No, you can someone could make a motion to table, and then the public hearing would just remain open.
Okay.
Brooke, I move we table this item to the May 11 meeting.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Vishal, for joining us too. All right, next item on the agenda under new business is Unified Development Ordinance. And this is the Udo. So Jenna, you gonna dive right in, right?
We are indeed. Brooke, do you want to just let the public know what our process will be? Or would you like me to review that quickly?
I will let you do that as I lost that screen a second.
Sure. So myself and our consultant, Chris Corey, will provide a 15 to 20 minute PowerPoint presentation, which is based off of the Udo staff report that we provided in the Planning Commission packet. And then after that, we will answer any questions that the Planning Commissioners may have. At which time Planning Commission will open up the public hearing, and everybody will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak on the Unified Development Ordinance. After that point, Planning Commission will, if any Planning Commissioners deem to further discuss any items that either the public has brought up, the staff has brought up, or that Planning Commissioners may want to bring up, they'll be able to do so at that point and further discuss any concerns that any of the Planning Commissioners have with any of the standards. And then if they do deem that they want to make recommendations or to change anything in the existing Unified Development Ordinance, they can either request or eventually recommend or at the last part of the meeting, they would recommend approval to City Council of the Unified Development Ordinance. They'll put conditions on it and conditions of approval for staff to change certain standards, or they may choose to table the Unified Development Ordinance until the next meeting to provide staff time to make different improvements that they might deem necessary. So giving that outline of a process, we will jump into our Unified Development Ordinance staff report presentation. A bit of a summary, what is Udo? Unified Development Ordinance that combines and references all development related ordinances, codes, policies, etc., so that all of the information is all in one place and is clearly accessible. The Udo includes these 4 actual existing City of Code ordinances: our zoning ordinance, which is Chapter 39 of the Code of Ordinances, our subdivision ordinance, which is Chapter 33, streets and sidewalks, which is Chapter 32, and trees and shrubs, which is Chapter 36. It also references a lot of different, like we say, development related ordinances and policies, housing, buildings, cable television and telecommunications, more so public lodging, the International Fire Code, and then of course our Holland Board of Public Works Terms of Services, to just highlight a few. Why are we doing this? Why do Udo? So the intent is to implement the City of Holland's 2017 master plan. All zoning ordinances, that is the intent of any zoning ordinance, is to be the implementation mechanism of a policy paper, of the adopted policy, which is the master plan. Also to update antiquated 1940s platform zoning ordinance. We have not done a full rewrite of the zoning ordinance ever. So we're based on the original 1940s platform. We've just done a lot of amendments up until now. So doing something really, really large to make everything more up to date. Also to clarify language, add graphics and other images to increase understanding for all users, to add best planning practice standards, and to enable a mixture of uses, which was identified as really goal number 1 in the master plan. You'll see that it comes up in all the different areas of our master plan. So in Appendix A of our Udo staff report, we provided you a comparison of what that master plan action step is and where exactly in Udo it is, and if it meets one of the most recent city council goals or not. So this is just a snippet of that much larger document, just pointing out that correlation, which is extremely important here. So how is Udo developed? This is really honestly a 20+ year process that was well before my time here, obviously. But certainly Mark was around when Mark Vanderploeg, when they started discussing the need to do a rewrite of the zoning ordinance. So it's always been on the list there for a long time of the to-dos. But in the winter of 2017, it made it to the top, and budget was approved by City Council. Half of the budget was approved for the fiscal year 2018, and then the other half for 2019. The Unified Development Ordinance method was determined as most adequate. We researched a bunch of different methods, including just doing a regular zoning ordinance update and subdivision ordinance update, and decided though that this is really the most comprehensive. It's a real pioneer in the world of planning in terms of just having everything together for ease of everyone that's using development related standards. So we began meeting diligently with other city department staff, making sure that their needs in terms of what's in their ordinances, that they generally maintain are being adopted. And then we sent out with Planning Commission's approval, a request for proposals for consultants in April 20 or on April 23rd, 2018. And out of the 5 firms that applied, we interviewed 3 planning commissioners, a subcommittee of planning commissioners and staff, and we chose McKenna Associates to assist us in the writing of the Unified Development Ordinance. So the process continued, and we began monthly meetings with McKenna Associates, analyzed all of the existing zoning ordinance language, subdivision ordinance, streets and sidewalks, et cetera, and then began authoring policy reports for Planning Commission to look specifically at all of the different sections of the Udo, educate Planning Commission on some best practices, see if there was a desire for some of the language that was being proposed in terms of zoning and subdivision and streets and sidewalk, et cetera, language. So continuing on, we had a very significant public outreach process. Really, we broke it down into 3 different categories, if you will. One with special events, the other stakeholder presentations and discussions, and then city board and commission public hearings. So special events included the development of the City of Holland's interactive website. This was how they were publicized on our website, the social media platforms, in utility bills, the city's monthly letter, flyers that were disseminated throughout the community, and in the Holland Sentinel. Some special events, actually all of the special events are listed here. We had our kickoff meeting back in August 28th, 2018. And then we had a week-long form-based code charrette in November of 2018. We conducted a housing survey from March to November 2019, had that comment board at Herrick Library in the summer of 2019. Industrial Zone District survey went out in June of 2019. Then we did our thorough Udo website update with story map in June of 2020. And then 5 video presentations were uploaded to our hollandudo.com website discussing everything Udo back in September of 2020. Stakeholder presentations. We met with the neighborhood connectors back in July of 2019. Form-based code subdistricts. We reached out to everybody in those subdistricts back in, this was actually September 3rd to 5th, 2019. Downtown form-based code subdistricts and Riverview group we met with in September 2019 as well, Central Park neighborhood. Then we had those 2 RTRN, which is now being proposed to be TNR, traditional neighborhood residential housing meetings. One was with 360, one with West Core, October of 2019. I presented at the West Coast Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Committee meeting in November of 2019. Then we had R1, which is proposed to be renamed to LDR, low density residential housing meetings. 3 of them in January of 2020 at Holland Heights, Jefferson Elementary School, and West Elementary School. And all of the details on all of those meetings, well, the majority of those meetings are provided in the appendix of the Udo staff report. Planning commissioners, thank you, planning commissioners, for volunteering so much of your time. So we commenced in August of 2018, all the way until March of 2021, that every single 4th Tuesday, minus maybe 2, 3 that were canceled, the 4th Tuesday of every month, we met on Udo topics public meetings. We had study session meetings at the regular meetings, which are our second Tuesday of every month. They held special Udo meetings and 2 advisory public hearings. A lot of work put in by Planning Commission, so we sincerely thank you for that. Advisory public hearings. So those occurred December 7th and 10th of 2020. Planning Commission elected to mail out postcard notices to the properties that are being proposed to actually be rezoned from one zone district to another. That included 174 residential properties that have 1 to 4 units and 778 non-residential properties or properties that have 5+ units that are residential. Also, Planning Commission elected to send out postcards to the 3,122 R1 property owners that have properties that are 10,000 square feet or greater, and then would therefore be directly affected by the zoning change standard that Planning Commission proposed. City board and commission meetings. We presented to City Council at 4 different public meetings, ranging from 2018 to 2020. We presented to the Downtown Development Authority twice, to the Historic District Commission, to the Principal Shopping District, and to the West Michigan Airport Authority as well. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Corey, and he's going to walk through what is in Udo.
Thanks, Jenna. I'm going to pull up my screen here. So everyone bear with me just 1 second. And then we'll go full screen. And hopefully everyone can see that. Just want to preface my portion here by saying, as Jenna did, thank you to the Planning Commission for all your hard work and everyone else at the city and in the public that put a lot of, has and will put a lot of time and effort and thought into this. I think it is something you should all be proud of. There's a lot in this document that is innovative, unique, cutting edge, and a lot in this document that will be hopefully, simpler, easier, and really an improvement on what you've been working with, which, as Jenna said, is still based on a 1943 platform. So this is a once a century project, and everyone I think should be pretty proud of their efforts as we get to this point. So what's in this document? It's 332 pages long, which sounds like a lot, but if you look at the ordinances that Jenna mentioned have been consolidated into this document, they total over 400 pages. So it's actually a reduction in number of pages, even though there's things in here that are new. It's divided into 14 articles, which is a reduction in the number of articles that would have included all of those ordinances, and 148 sections. And then within each of those sections, right, there's some of them have just one standard or regulation, others have quite a few, but that's sort of your dividing portion of the document. As with any zoning update, there's really 2 parts, right? There's the text and there's the map. So just to briefly hit on the map a little bit, this is the Udo proposed map as it stands right now. And as you see there, the note that the existing map in some places didn't always follow parcel lines. And the Udo map isn't 100% following parcel lines either. We made some decisions to split zones of parcels, but for the most part, the vast majority of parcels in the city, you have one zone district. That is what you're zoned, and it's clear. And then the map is sort of based on that parcel base. So as we had to come up with a new map, and I'll get into the list of zone districts and how it has changed from the current ordinance to the Udo, a number of properties, as Jenna mentioned, did have to be rezoned. We had 174 residential properties. Of course, we defined that as anything with 4 or fewer units. But as noted in the text here, a big chunk of that was in the Central Park neighborhood, where the rezoning was because there's a brand new zone district designed just for the unique character of that district. And then another big chunk of that is lots that are currently zoned agricultural, which is a zone district that the Udo doesn't use. So for the most part, residential properties were simply moved into the equivalent zoning district or zone district from what they are now. As far as non-residential and multifamily type, there's 778 of those lots, and a lot of those are going into form-based code or one of our other new districts, which I'll discuss here. This is a comparison of the existing zone districts in the current ordinance versus the proposed districts in the Udo. As you can see, there are some that are just a straight across, maybe a renaming or not even that, but they have a clear connection to the previous. There are some that are new. There are some that are combinations of multiple districts in the existing ordinance. And then, of course, there's districts in the existing ordinance that have been removed entirely and don't exist in Udo anymore. As a broad overview, there was some combining in the higher density residential districts, and there was combining in the commercial districts, which, as you may notice on the right-hand column, we don't have any commercial districts anymore. They are all now called mixed-use districts because they are all districts where housing is an option in some capacity, whereas maybe it wasn't before. All right, now I'm going to walk through the 14 articles individually, just kind of a quick overview of with the purpose of each one and why it's there. Article 1 is the introduction. So, but unlike some zoning ordinances, you see where the introduction chapter or article is mainly legalese and stuff that has to be in there, to make sure that the ordinance has force and effect and is defensible. In this case, we tried to make this more useful. And so one of the big things that's in this article is what we call the toolbox. The toolbox is a one-stop shop for the basic questions of the Udo. Things like, how do I measure a setback? Which lot line is which? How do I measure the height of my building? What if I want to do a certain thing? Where do I go in the Udo to find out the rules for it? All of that is right there in Article 1, much of it in the toolbox subsection. Article 2 covers each zone district one by one. It actually starts with a summary table. You can see an example of part of the summary table on the left there that basically says, okay, what uses are allowed in this district or in each district? And you can kind of see them all at a glance. And then following that is another summary table that says, what are the required setbacks and building heights and that kind of thing in each district at a glance. Then it goes district by district, listing the permitted uses and the setbacks and the other dimensional requirements. Also included in this chapter, and this is an innovative thing, are parking requirements, because those are different on a zone district by zone district basis. That's not the case in most zoning ordinances. So this is rather than the current ordinance, which has an article for each district. These are all in one article, one after the other in these in the spreads that are mostly charts. Article 3 dives into the details of the form-based code, which is, as you guys know, a zone district, but it contains within it sub-districts that have different rules. The form-based code is organized in 3 ways in terms of the building type, which is what can go on within the building, the building frontage, which is how the building interacts with the street, and the building envelope, which is the dimensions of the building regarding the setbacks, the height, and things of that nature. So the form-based code article dives into all of that in detail. As you can see, it's very graphic heavy and hopefully will be fairly easy for developers to navigate. Article 4 gets into the specific standards for a given use. Now, not every use has specific standards, but some things are special. You can see the alternative energy section there on the right, that there's certain uses that they need specific requirements and regulations so that they can interact and exist with what's around them. And that's all in Article 4. Article 5 is called the Site Design Review article, and what it is for is a one-stop shop for a developer who's going to build something that's going to site plan approval to understand all of the approvals they need, all of the requirements in terms of what goes to the Planning Commission and what they're going to have to prepare to have an approvable application. So what this does is it puts everything in one place. So some elements of this are referencing other places. Some elements have the actual standards. Some elements say you need to go talk to fire department or the BPW. If it this way, you go to one chapter, one article, and you can find everything that you need for that kind of thing. Then we get into some specific requirements in the next several articles of development projects. So the next one is landscaping and green infrastructure. This has been substantially rewritten and is dramatically modernized for what's in the existing ordinance to really get at today's issues with things like stormwater and heat islands, as well as the aesthetic beauty of the community. The next section is on lighting. And again, this is one that's been pretty substantially updated from what you have now to try to make sure we have sufficient lighting without light pollution on any given site. The next article is about signage, which is important to the aesthetics of the community as well as health and safety. As you can see, much of this article is devoted to these charts that look like the one on the left that give you an at-a-glance look at the allowable signage in a given zone district. Article 9 is other development standards, general standards that didn't warrant an entire article, but are important in of themselves. Parking, bicycle parking, not the number of spaces, which is in Article 2, but the actual layout and dimensions and construction and that kind of thing. Additionally, things about dwelling units, accessory structures, fences, your infill design review, fair housing policy, borders, essential services, medical marijuana, kind of the general stuff that needs somewhere to fit. And this is also the chapter where a lot of homeowners are going to end up with things like fences and accessory structures. Article 10 is regarding street sidewalks and driveways, and this pulls in a number of things that were not currently in the zoning ordinance, most notably a subdivision ordinance, so that's also addressed in Article 11, and also the sort of streets and sidewalks and policies about street design that traditionally aren't considered part of zoning, but as part of the Udo process, we thought this is really important because even if you design a great private realm development, if the street doesn't support it, it's not going to succeed. So this ensures that street design and building design go hand in hand. And Article 10 has a lot of specific either requirements if we're talking developers or just guidelines and policies if we're talking the city for street design. Article 11, as I said, pulls in the rest of the subdivision ordinance, things like lot size requirements and subdivision processes, which are currently outside of zoning, bringing that into Udo so that it's all one place. Article 12 is a comprehensive description of the processes for getting various things approved, much of which is included in charts like the one on the left, so that you kind of go down that left-hand column. What am I trying to build? And then I can see who I need to get approvals from. It also includes another chart that is a comprehensive list of what needs to be submitted for a site plan, including different types of site plans, administrative review team versus planning commission, et cetera. Article 13 is regarding non-conforming uses, et cetera. Non-conforming in this case meaning a legal nonconformity, which is something that existed prior to the adoption of Udo, which is under zoning law can continue as it was previously constituted, but cannot be expanded. And this article gets into the details of those rules. And then finally, Article 14 is the definitions. All zoning ordinances include a definitions chapter. This one has been carefully crafted to make sure that we're hitting the most important words, the most technical words, but also uses that are listed so that when a term is used, it's clear what it means. One kind of cool thing in the Udo is that technical and common terms that are in this definition section are italicized throughout the text. So as you read it, you could say, oh, well, what exactly does that mean? And you see it's italicized, you know it's in Article 14, and you can go find the definition there. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jenna to go through a detailed description of the public comment that's been received.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let's get me back to that slide. Oh no, with the cards. Okay, here we are. So also in the Udo staff report, we went through providing all of the different public comments, which was extremely invaluable in our Udo process. We received 242 surveys back with our housing survey. 808 comments were on our library board that again was up in at Herrick Library next to City Hall for the summer of 2019. You know, I wish I would have counted all of the people that we met with for the stakeholder meetings, estimating about 150 or so. The industrial property survey, 22 respondents for that. And then since November 21st, 2020 to April 3rd, 2021, since we actually sent out those postcards, we've received 701 comments by email, mail, and comments that were made at meetings. Of those 701 comments, 432 total commenters, 369 opposed one or more of Udo items, and 63 were in support of one or more of the Udo items. Planning commissioners did ask us to determine what population that was of the city. That's 1.3% of the total population and 1.7% of the population 18 years of age or older were the commenters. And then we go through in the Udo report, and I'm not going to take too much time here, but the zoning standard changes that received the most public comment, pretty evident from our meetings in the past several months, but the CNR Cottage Neighborhood Residential Zone District. So the standards were initially proposed by staff and planning commission. Public feedback was that some of the standards people are not supportive of, the people that live in the Central Park neighborhood. And planning commission then worked with them to better meet their expectations and their interests. NMU, the Neighborhood Mixed Use Zone District, basically a lot of conversation occurred on it regarding the uses that were allowed, as well as the percentage of glass transparency. And then basically to clarify that NMU is a mixed use zone district with an emphasis on commercial neighborhood uses by adjusting, and we did that by adjusting the use percentages and the glass transparency standards based on planning commission's feedback, which was spurred in part by public comment. The TNR zone district lot size and frontage width minimums, the intent of which is to provide additional housing opportunities, which is the goal of the master plan. Existing requirement is that there be 4,800 square feet of lot per unit, 2 to 4 units in the TNR zone district, with a 60-foot width frontage. For just 2 units currently, that means that 171 properties are eligible for that, for those uses, which is 7% of the properties of the RTRN or TNR zone district. So initially, planning commission had proposed dropping that number down to 3,250 square feet of lot per unit with a 50-foot frontage requirement. That made the amount of eligible 2 units jump to 881 properties. 2-unit properties, 881 eligible properties, 37% of the RTRN TNR zone district properties. So after public comment, planning commission and staff worked, and planning commission ultimately determined that they would be most comfortable with 4,000 square feet of lot per unit and 50 feet of frontage. So for the 2-unit mark, that would mean that 248 properties would be eligible, and which is 10% of the RTRN zone district properties. The other topic was the LDR zone district. So initially, again, to provide additional housing opportunities. Currently, just detached accessory dwelling units are permitted on single family properties when 1 unit is owner occupied and then also meeting other conditions. Initially, planning commission proposed that two units could be built on lots that are 10,000 square feet or greater without any other conditions. After public comment, Planning Commission has proposed that, as is the case for the detached accessory dwelling units that are already eligible, are already permitted in the zone district, that 2-unit conversions or attached accessory dwelling units permitted on lots 10,000 square feet or greater would be permitted if 1 unit is owner occupied. And then the conversions could not change the exterior of the home in order to keep the character, and noticing is required, public noticing of the project is required, as is the case for detached accessory dwelling units now. Another item was the waterfront public access easement. So that's been worked on quite considerably by Planning Commission. Quickly, initially they were proposing a 30-foot wide public access easement with a required pathway. After talking with public and our attorney, they're now proposing that only be required if, or not as a requirement, but rather as an incentive to have a higher structure height if the public access easement is provided versus a lower structure height if it's not provided. And then also not needing to have a view shed requirement, which means the space between buildings if a waterfront public access easement is provided. So the intent of which is that even if the access easement is not provided, at least the public walking down Pine can see the lake from a distance, albeit from a distance. Downtown residential parking requirement. That was another topic that's been discussed frequently. Currently, the zoning ordinance requires 1 space per dwelling unit citywide. Still, Planning Commission and staff is recommending to keep that at 1 space per unit. And the reasons for that is that Planning Commission has determined that it's the most equitable way to regulate residential parking citywide. Downtowns are well positioned for higher density development and walkability. And per the master plan, the character of downtown is to be walkable, which would the character desired there is not compatible with providing larger parking lots and smaller buildings. So in conclusion, our 3-year Udo process has been very comprehensive, very transparent. We again thank everybody that's been involved in it, Planning Commission, our consultant, staff, the public. Absolutely, we really are excited about this document. And we certainly have methodically gone through all of the existing zoning district standards and tried to implement the master plan with this document to the greatest extent possible. And Planning Commission staff and consultants definitely heard and listened to public feedback and did a great job in incorporating those changes. And we believe that, like I said, Udo is very well prepared and thoughtful document. And staff's recommendation would be that following a public hearing, Planning Commission recommend approval of the Unified Development Ordinance to City Council, conditioned on staff making changes to Udo as directed by Planning Commission. Next steps, we're following Planning Commission's vote to recommend approval of Udo to the City Council. The city manager will schedule at least 1 City Council study session, the date to be determined. And then once City Council is ready to go forward, first reading of the Udo will be scheduled. And then ultimately, when they're ready, an adoption public hearing will be scheduled where the vote would occur by City Council. And once approved by City Council by law, Udo will then become effective 21 days later. So thank you, everybody. And at this point, I will turn the meeting back over to our chair, Brooke Anderson.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, Chris. All right. At this time, we will open a public hearing. As Jenna had said earlier, we will do a 3-minute allowance for each comment for each person. And you can raise your hand yourself, or you can do it digitally, and Mallory will unmute you. And I will start the timer after you have stated your name and address. I see Jay and Mary Wortley. There we go.
Hey. My name is Jay Wortley. I live at 311 West 12th Street. I urge you to not pass the density increasing zoning changes contained in the Udo. These changes will increase housing density in the older core neighborhoods, which are already the most densely populated areas of the city. This will hurt the character and charm of these neighborhoods, which will hurt all current residents of these neighborhoods, both homeowners and renters. Housing density will increase under your plan because it will make it easier to convert single-family homes into multifamily units. Now is not the time to be increasing, or rather decreasing, single-family houses. Holland, like most parts of the state and nation, currently has a shortage of single-family houses. This affects all income levels, but is particularly hard on low and middle income renters who are trying to become homeowners. The limited supply relative to demand is already driving up house prices, and if the number of single-family houses is further reduced, this problem only worsens. Your plan will only make it harder for young families to fulfill their dream of owning a house in Holland. It has been said by you and city staff many times, don't worry, these changes can always be changed in the future if they do indeed harm these neighborhoods, which is a true statement, but by then the irreversible damage will have already been done. Good government does not ignore the reasonable concerns of its citizens. Again, I urge you not to pass the proposed density increasing zoning changes. The Udo, without these density zoning changes, appears to be an excellent proposal. You should be proud of it. It will be a win for citizens, businesses, and government. If you want to pass something that is good government, pass Udo without the density increasing zoning changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wortley. Mika Weiss. There we go.
Hi. My name is Mika Weiss, and I live at 60 East 21st Street. And I'm here because I wanted to thank you for putting so much work into this document. I'm blown away by it. I love all the things that you've included, that you've addressed things like stormwater and access management and things like that, that are just, I think that's wonderful. I love it. I live in one of the core city neighborhoods. I'm actually in favor of the density increases. I did the math on it, and the apartments that are currently in our neighborhood still wouldn't be allowed even under the Udo with the current density. Even with the increases in density, the existing units that were already grandfathered in still wouldn't be able to be built today. So I don't think that the change is going to be as dramatic as many fear. I think it's a wonderful step forward. And I think that this document is going to do a lot to move Holland closer to the future that we'd like to have. It will make us a little bit more nimble and responsive, both as individual homeowners and as a city as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Mika. Dale Hoskins.
Thank you.
There we go.
I'm Dale Hoskins and live at 262 West 12th in the historic district of the TNR zone. I want to congratulate you on a well-constructed ordinance. I believe that it is unique and cutting edge. I had trouble understanding current zone requirements, but could easily see what the Udo permits. The problem is that you chose to use this opportunity to permit density increases. I don't know anyone who opposes the Udo, just people who oppose the density increases and how it will impact their neighborhood and reduce the supply of houses for purchase. some people might be happy with the density increases, but only those where it affects other neighborhoods and not their own. In this last meeting before the Udo goes to council, I want to talk to you more about your process. Give 3 examples of how you've been propagating misinformation, in my view. Your public comment analysis covers a 2-year period, but as we come to understand the impact of Udo, more and more oppose it. The hundreds of comments over the past few months, 90% oppose, and some of those are non-residents. I searched the letters to the Sentinel since mid-December, and 9 were opposed, 6 complained about the process, and only 3 supported it. Okay, misinformation, 3 items. Affordable housing. You've conflated 2 issues. 1, the need for a unified development ordinance, and 2, the need for affordable housing. Is it not surprising that the majority of the people who do support the Udo bases their argument on the need for more affordable housing? Their arguments imply that people with angry no to rezoning signs like me are greedy or even racist. I'm a block connector and hear the cries of my poor neighbors being held hostage by their landlords, and because they are afraid to report the miserable conditions in which they live. I know of other renting neighbors who want to purchase a home in Holland but are grieved as the prices go up and up, while the city plans will only exacerbate their problem. The Udo is not completely insensitive to how densification will impact the charm of their neighborhood. That's why you protected the Hope neighborhood overlay from conversion. 2, environmental sustainability. The Udo proudly markets the importance of low impact development standards. It explains how LID standards will increase property values and mental health, reduce crime, and conserve energy. However, these LID standards do not apply to the TRN. Instead, you do the opposite by inviting developers to replace our trees and our landscaping with bricks, concrete, and asphalt, which will exacerbate the urban heat island microclimate in the inner city neighborhoods. It is this very feature that is causing our tulips to bloom earlier downtown each year. Walkability. The Udo states that it will promote walkable neighborhoods. I've learned that it really only helps walkability in the form-based code and mixed-use zone districts. It doesn't help in my neighborhood. It doesn't help in conventional neighborhoods. I suggest you go to walkscore.com to learn more about it. Holland is a car-dependent city with a walk score of 43 out of 100. I live on 12th. My score is 60, but the same address in New York City has a score of 100. To score highly in a walkable neighborhood, it needs a full range of essential amenities that are quickly and safely accessible on foot. Your Udo does nothing to incentivize this in the conventional neighborhoods. I'll end by quoting the Simon and Garfunkel song that I keep singing over my head. You're breaking my heart. You're shaking my confidence daily. I'm down on my knees begging you, please. Don't rezone.
All right, Donna Short. There we go. Oh, sorry. Donna Short. There we go. Mr. Short, I presume. Uh-oh. We can't hear you very well. Are you close to your microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
The address is 810 Myrtle Avenue. And I'm here with my wife, Donna. And I would like to claim her time, if you would allow it, and have 6 minutes.
Yep.
You want to say?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I know that some of you received my letter because I sent it to you. I'm going to read that letter because it did not make it in the Sentinel. It's 4 reasons why I oppose upzoning and the proposed UDO developed by the Holland City Planning Commission. The first, upzoning and the UDO will make homes with street frontage of 100 feet or greater the targets of developers and future landlords. Already, homeowners in the historic district have received unsolicited offers to buy their homes from out-of-town developers. My family home for more than 27 years will also become a target for redevelopment. The process, number 2, the process of upzoning has been characterized as a gentle densification of Holland neighborhoods, but the densification is gentle. The UDO with the upzoning
affects more than 4,000 owner-occupied single-family homes of the 7,306 homes that are noted in the 2020 census records. That's 57% throughout Holland city neighborhoods. The UDO allows conversions, and I want people to understand that conversions should be read as duplexes and subdivisions of eligible properties on which new homes and conversions could be built. The Planning Commission has put together the process of upzoning in the UDO, whereby the city will permit a gentle increase in density with the intent of addressing housing shortages within the city. A major portion of the neighborhoods in Holland have been combined into two residential zones, the LDR and the TNR zones. This is where upzoning with its conversions and subdivision of properties will have its greatest effects. Recent articles in national newspapers report that this area is facing a shortage of single-family homes, which has driven up the price of such homes by 27% in the past year. Having fewer single-family homes will only make these price increases worsen. Number three, the UDO and its proponents use clever wording to minimize sensitive issues raised by Holland residents. For example, objections to duplexes on eligible properties was addressed in a subsequent meeting with a revised draft, where the word conversions now took its place. In another instance, several Holland residents commented at a PC meeting that the intent of the proposed UDO was a means to achieve affordable housing. A planning commission member quickly corrected the comments, saying that the UDO was not about affordable housing. However, in planning committee documents, see July 2019 or August 2019, the following statement is made. The goal is to provide for gentle density in the neighborhoods in certain areas to allow for more affordable housing options. Number four, facts do not support the comment made by an elected city official who stated that residents opposed to the UDO were representatives of groups that are vocal minorities, and they will always exist. This communication occurred after the comments portion of the March 23rd, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. The reality is those in opposition to the proposed UDO are a big majority. Understand that the 4 comments that were made earlier in the presentation by Jenna of 808, many of them were made at the library prior to the time when the residential zoning changes took place. According to the city survey, which had less than 40 respondents, that's public document on the Holland website, of those in support, only 3 Holland residents said they liked the proposal. However, when you consider the large group of residents from the letters and PC meetings, that's Appendix G in the UDO document that Jenna was just reviewing, Appendix G, those who commented, there were 483 residents who gave responses or made comments. 429 in opposition to the UDO and 54 in support of the UDO. These are Holland residents who made the comments, not others outside of Holland. A total of 622 comments were in opposition to the UDO, as opposed to 70 comments in support of the UDO. Those numbers represent 89% of all people, only 11% in support of the comments, 90% of all comments opposed, and 10% in support. The fact remains, residents who publicly oppose the UDO outnumber residents who publicly support the UDO by 9 to 1. Thank you.
Jerry Comian. I hope I said that right. There we
Yes,
go.
yes, close.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Comian, and I live at 184 West 37th Street. I want to first say that, again, that I am opposed to the rezoning of R1 housing to LDR. It seems that regardless of the vast opposition expressed in these meetings by the public, nothing has been done to change this part of the UDO. Today, however, I want to address the following. Since it seems inevitable that the Planning Commission will pass the UDO proposal without any further change to the R1 to LDR rezoning, I want to better understand the following. Now I'm going to refer to the actual UDO on page 239, section 9.04, item D, and it reads, conversions of principal dwelling units. A conversion from a single detached dwelling unit to attached dwelling units, or from attached dwelling units to a single detached dwelling unit, shall be permitted by the zoning administrator and as allowed by the building code. Item 1, zone districts permitted. Conversions are permitted in any zone district where the converted use is permitted. Item A, LDR, low density residential zone district. Conversions from a single detached dwelling unit to a 2-unit attached dwelling unit shall, and then item 3, have 1 owner occupied unit. Now, I applaud that item. However, my question is, how will this be enforced and what penalty is there for no compliance? It will mean nothing to have this in the ordinance if it's not enforced and with significant penalty for non-compliance. And how would a resident who lives in the area take action if they, clearly find out that it is not being, 1 unit is not occupied by an owner? That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linnell? Linnell, I have no video. Oh, there we go. Oh, it went away again. There. Okay, and Mallory will unmute you here in a second. And you will have to give permission to unmute. There will be a button that will. There we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Linnell Folkert. I live at 620 Central Bay Avenue. And Jerry just stole my question, but that's great that we all have the same question, is how are you going to, I have already heard comment from somebody who wants to convert their home and they are simply going to have their mail sent to that location, but they're not going to be living there and they're going to turn it into a 2-family. We already have 1/3 of our homes that are multifamily, and I see this as a real, not sure if I can find the right adjective, but kind of a slap in the face to the taxpayers who have put down the roots and who have paid for Holland to be a multi-family, which it already is, multi-racial, multi-generational place that people want to live. But if you remove any of these restrictions, you will have opened up the entire city of Holland to be able to be multifamily and no longer single family homes. And how is that going to affect our schools? I have not heard any comment on any of the calls that have been on of is this going to affect our schools? I guess you're wanting numbers of families to live in smaller density spaces. And I just don't see where that's encouraging our city to grow as a family-based location. So I don't see who benefits from this, who's living in the city right now, who we have all paid our taxes, we've paid our dues, we have done our very best to be great neighbors to everybody who is in our residential zones. But help me understand somehow why this HDR is a positive thing, unless there's some money being backed that you guys are going to receive somehow through this. I'm not seeing it, because we're getting all the letters from people who don't live in this area who want to buy our home. And I just feel that that is a real shame. One more comment would be about the waterfront. No spaces for Lakeview. We're a lakefront town. I don't understand why you would take those out, those spaces for visual. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Linnell. Any other comments on this item? Oh, Lynn Burns. There we go.
Hi, my name is Lynn Burns. I live at 457 Brocado Court here in Holland. And we are short-term residents. We've only been here 3 years. And I have written a letter already with different information about why I think that the rezoning should be not included in the UDO. Part of the, so these are bullet points: converting single family homes into multifamily rentals, the LDR units, would undermine the charm and character of these areas, these neighborhoods. And this is from firsthand experience, living in a town which did exactly what you're proposing to do. And I am sorry, but renters do not have the pride of ownership that homeowners have. They are not financially liable for the property, and they don't care about it the way that homeowners do. And I 100% oppose changing, especially such a drastic amount of properties that you're encompassing in this plan. The COVID pandemic, I think, has actually increased the desire for single family homes with people wanting in-home offices. And I think consideration should be given to the following. More people means more students in the schools. It certainly will impact the schools. More people always means more cars, which will impact parking and traffic, again, affecting the character of our neighborhoods. More people means more sewage, affecting that infrastructure as well. And I've not heard anything about that. And owner occupied cannot be enforced properly. You can say it all you want. As soon as the enforcement leaves, so could the supposed owner. And that's what will happen. And I've seen it over and over again in San Jose, where we moved from. So San Jose also allowed mother-in-law units, so a separate unit on the property. They turned into entire family units with teenagers, with cars, more cars, than just one. Lots of garbage, lots more garbage out of the street on garbage day, lots of traffic and overcrowding in the schools. The zero lot line homes destroyed the beautiful neighborhoods that we lived in. It destroyed the landscaping that was there previously, and it just completely changes the atmosphere of the home. The proposed rezoning encompasses too much, too many homes, too many neighborhoods and areas, and the unique character of Holland will definitely be affected. And that's from personal experience. Another note regarding the downtown residential parking. 1 car per unit is absurd. I'm sorry. People are car dependent in our country, and that will result in less parking for customers, for the businesses and the restaurants. And people won't, if you can't find a place to park, you won't be able to, they won't go there anymore. So thank you for letting me comment.
Jim DeBoer. There we go. I was going to say, I don't have any video there.
Hey,
but
there I
there.
am.
Yep.
Jim DeBoer, 157 West 40th Street in lovely Holland. Hey, just a couple of things. I'd like to clarify that all the public meetings and outreaches that took place in 2018 and 2019 did not have specific residential zoning changes in those presentations. The library meeting with hundreds attending that were very positive for Udo was in 2019, prior to the release of the detailed residential changes. And as Mr. Short stated earlier, I believe, it was him, said total commenters does not equal number of people. So when that data was given, because when the city looked at a letter, according to my research, even if it had multiple signatures, which could have been 1, 2, 3, up to 7, it was considered as one commenter. And so in my opinion, that should be 7. So the numbers are even greater. So please be accurate when you share this with the council, so that reflects it. And my last comment is the Udo website states that the desire is to have Udo reflect the vision of all Holland residents and stakeholders. And we want to hear from you. Well, you've heard no from residents in an overwhelming way. So we just ask you to live up to what your primary goals were on the website, and thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else on this item? Chris Meyer. Mallory will unmute you here a minute. There we go.
Thank you very much. Can I share my screen here?
No.
I can't. Okay.
No. You can submit that later on if you would like to Jenna or to Mark.
Oh, I did. It's a letter. So my name is Chris Meyer. I am counsel for the Harbor Users Group, which is the Padnos family of companies, the Verplank family of companies, and Brewer City Docks, which operates along Lake Macatawa. First of all, I want to say thank you to Jenna and Mark for their work on this. We did meet with them, and some of our concerns were addressed, and I really appreciate that being done at the staff level like that in an efficient and professional way. My understanding is that one of our concerns regarding the rezoning of 164 West 7th Street has been addressed. And so I see Mark nodding, so I won't address that on this call or in this hearing. So the issue that I will address in this hearing is the waterfront overlay district. And we sent in a letter last month on this, and I'm not going to say anything different than what is in the letter, but just wanted to draw your attention to our four primary concerns there. Number one, while this section initially exempts the Harbor Users Group properties from the waterfront overlay district, the council, through a planning commission recommendation, could immediately turn around and rezone those properties into that district without the consent of the harbor user groups. And again, the harbor user group members are Padnos, Verplank, and Brewer City Dock. And if the city is going to adopt the waterfront overlay district, then it should only apply to my client's properties only if they request the rezoning. The city shouldn't be able to impose this on them. It should only be something that is requested by my clients. And this gets to our second concern, and that is that these height restrictions and view shed requirements, if my clients were to request the rezoning, are arbitrary and punitive. They don't line up with the height restrictions, which are higher for the remainder of Lake Macatawa property. And of course, the remainder of Lake Macatawa property doesn't require view shed requirements. And so I know when Jenna went through the proposal, she said, well, we tried to make it less punitive on the advice of our attorney, which I appreciate, but it is still punitive. If the city would like to make this a carrot, then my clients, if they choose to redevelop their property, should be subject to the same rules that the remaining owners on Lake Macatawa are subject to. And if they want to grant the public easement, then they would have additional height opportunities. In other words, make it 100% a carrot. It still remains the way it's written, more stick than carrot. Number three, there's nothing in here in this ordinance saying that the city will live up to its obligation.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm sorry?
Thank you. That's been 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. The remainder of our comments are in the letter that I submitted last month and would be in your packet.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Denise, you had raised your hand earlier, correct? Okay. Mallory will unmute you here a minute. There we go. State your name and address for the record.
Sure, Denise Byer, 996 Colonial Court, south side of Holland. First, I'd just like to respectfully ask that you don't increase the density in residential neighborhoods with the Udo as currently written. I am so surprised. I feel like so many people have talked, but I don't know how many people have been heard. To have 90% of the people who have taken the time to speak up, it feels like it's just fallen on deaf ears. And as someone just read from what your mission statement was that you want the character of the neighborhoods to reflect what the people want. And I don't know how better to say it than all the voices that you've heard so far. I just have a few comments. It's been asked that the Udo plan be put off until we can have in-person meetings. I'm not the only person who's asked that. It's been asked over and over again in the paper, in our meetings, but it's never been addressed. And I feel like you're really leaving out a good share of the public that is older homeowners, but they're not real tech savvy. I fall into that category and feel like I have issues myself just trying to attend the Zoom meetings, and others have said, I just can't figure it out. So I'm just wondering why that particular request has just been ignored. What's the hurry? Also, there's been a number of additional housing being built and proposed to be built throughout Holland. And I'm wondering why we can't wait to see what effect that has on satisfying the need of increasing density that's planned out and not just willy-nilly who wants to add something else in their backyard. You might not feel it's willy-nilly, but I kind of do. And I don't really want my neighbors to be adding stuff on in their backyards. I also, when Mark and I talked, there's a lot of neighborhoods that won't be affected by this at all, because when they were developed, they have certain language that says you can't add another outbuilding onto your property. So is it only the older residential neighborhoods of Holland that will be affected by this, and the others are protected by their own language that was developed when the certain housing developments came into play with their own regulations? I just feel that's kind of biased, that there's just a certain area of Holland that will have to accommodate this, and others through their subdivision language are affected by it at all. You have mentioned that there was a housing survey that went out. How many people did it go to, and what were the results of it? I don't see those comments available anywhere. Maybe I missed them, but I know I didn't receive any, and I don't know of any other person that has. So how reflective of it is it for the city of Holland? How well were your meetings attended from 2018 to the fall of 2020? I'm thinking maybe not so much.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Daniel Lowry. Mallory will unmute you here. There we go.
Hi. Daniel Holly Lowry, 318 Central Avenue in Holland. I just wanted to take a moment and thank the Planning Commission and the city staff for their time and labor in this process, and all the good work you've put forth. Rather than belabor the time I have available to me, I'd just like to voice my support for the Udo as it exists, and commend you on the work that you've done so far.
Thank you, Daniel. Are you sure that's it?
I'm positive.
Okay. Thank you. I saw a hand go up and then down for Mitch. I don't have video, so I can't. I'm not sure if that was a glitch or not. Did you see that, Mallory? Yeah.
I sent a request to unmute to him, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm seeing. Okay. I'm not sure if Mitch can hear me. No, okay, let's do Mark Cook. There we go.
Okay, I'm Mark Cook. I live at 144 West 12th Street in the city. And I don't know if I can lower my hand here a minute. Okay. You don't need to see that anymore. Yeah, I'd like to speak just for a moment on my support for the Udo document and all the work that the Planning Commission has put into it. I'm sure, I know it was a long process and very difficult, and a lot of items were carefully gone over. I'd just like to say thank you to the commission. My wife and I bought our house on 12th Street in 1976, so we've spent the last 45 years enjoying the historic district, and I was actually on the original committee that urged the city to adopt the historic district. And now in my retirement, I've kind of come full circle and I'm on the Historic District Commission. And I'm passionate about living in the core city and in the historic district. And I take pride in how it's improved over the years and become a desirable place to live in Holland. And I'm glad people want to live here. I also want to just take a minute to say that rentals seem to me to be an intrinsic part of what the city offers. And I rented a house across from Centennial Park when I first left college. My children have rented houses. They're still renting. In one case, my daughter who lives in Boston is where she'll probably never be able to afford a house, is renting. So I feel like our family has benefited from rental housing, and I feel like it's an important component to the city. The other thing that I'd like to address is density. And I feel like density is kind of what cities are about. And certainly there's a balance of it, but people live in cities because you can walk to places, you can have amenities that are created for entertainment, for food. So I don't see personally density as a terrible thing, and especially the kind of incremental density that we're talking about. The historic district actually had a pretty amazing instant density thing a few years ago with the Washington School development. I think over 10 houses were built and 17 units added to the Washington School building. So we suddenly had 30 households added to a block, basically a city block. I have heard no one complain about that increase in density. So I feel like I don't think we would notice another 30 units added over the entire historic district. So I guess those are my 2 points. And finally, I love living in Holland, and I like the historic district in particular, and I hope that we can have a progressive change in the zoning ordinance. And I think that Udo can both retain our sense of history, but also move us forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. I see Nicholas Rulinski and a cute little toddler sleeping on his shoulder. Well, his eyes are open, but go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of that comment. I want to thank the planning commissioners and
name and address for the record, Nick.
Yes, 556 Washington Avenue, Holland, Michigan. I want to piggyback off of that comment and thank Planning Commission and staff and those involved in the work on this. I'm not, totally satisfied with every little aspect of the Udo as it's currently drafted myself, but I think that like with a lot of things in life, you don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and that it's never one extreme or the other. There's usually different nuances and details and aspects that all kind of become entangled with each other. And ultimately, the question becomes, do you have something that resembles compromise and is of the community? And there's been a lot of vocalization and opposition to certain aspects of this. And I think that has a lot to do with how the TNR district and the LDR district were often talked about at the same time, even though they're very fundamentally different in context. And so I support the adoption of this document in its current draft. Certainly, as long as I'm in this community, I'll have other constructive feedback to offer to anyone who will listen relative to these issues. But I think you kind of need to, as Mark would say, land the plane here, get this thing adopted, and I support it.
Thank you, Nick. Anyone else on this item? Mallory, do you see any hands? No.
Not
Okay.
seeing anyone else, no.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, I will close the public hearing. Is there any discussion among commission members on this item? Yes, Lynn, you're muted. Let's unmute.
Thank you, Mallory. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted, because of several people brought it up, I wondered if we could just backtrack, and I'm not sure this is really an Udo issue, but just wonder if we could talk a little bit about how the city staff enforces the owner occupied element of the owner occupied element of LDR in this particular case.
Jenna, did you want to do that one or me?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you do it.
Well, so anybody coming in for a conversion, as far as I know here, would have to go through a process, would need to get approved by I believe it's the Board of Appeals, would have to be doing this. So there's a number of criteria that would have to be met. And one of them would be basically, the applicant then, the homeowner, proving that they are living there. And there's various ways that we can go about, ascertaining that. And so, I mean, so we can require that, and we can monitor that. And, certainly the rental part of a conversion would be subject to a rental housing program, would have to be inspected once every 3 years. And that would continue on. I mean, I know that there were comments of a couple people indicated, well, there's going to be some people just renting out the whole thing and perhaps having their mailing address be at this property, but then they're just going to kind of sneakily do it and just have, rent out the whole home. There's ways that we can kind of figure that out too. I mean, yes, sometimes we do rely on neighbors to complain if they see something like that's happening. And if we do receive complaints, we would look into it and enforce it. And so it just kind of becomes an enforcement issue. But it's something that we're completely set up to monitor and to enforce if need be. So.
Mark, just for clarification, if someone wants to turn their home into a rental at any point in time, they can do that, correct?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, anybody in the R1 district right now, soon to be LDR district, anybody could convert their home, yes, into a rental. That is a property right that people have. Now they would have to be approved underneath our rental ordinance. And if they don't meet the criteria and don't meet their codes or whatever, we can disallow that. But yeah, if they meet all the code requirements, any residential property could become a rental. There are some, restrictions, as we know, in the whole neighborhood area where, somebody may not be able to do that. So, but overall, as a general statement, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just wanted that clarification. I know that comment was mentioned a couple times, how we have too many rentals, but anyone can turn their home into a rental at any point in time if they qualify.
One quick question while we're still on this. Mark, what is the penalty if you convert, or if you add a mother-in-law apartment and then rent both of them? I mean, do you lose the property?
No, we we would enforce the ordinance and try to, and make them come into compliance, okay? And we have processes for doing that. And, and could go all the way up to including the legal system if need be. So.
That's why we have a city attorney.
And all of that information is in our code of ordinances in chapter 2. It's also referenced in the Udo in Article 12 under violations and penalties, the last section of Article 12.
Thanks, you guys. Any other questions from commission members or comments?
I have a few of, go ahead, Lynn, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple more, but since I went first, somebody else could go and. Go ahead.
Oh, are you waiting your turn?
Everybody knows how long I like to speak, so I'll just wait.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Okay.
I have a question. Let me just
yeah.
ask the question. Where are we on our agenda? Are we at 2-4 planning commissioners discuss any items commissioners still want to discuss, or are we on 3?
Are you Robert? Shall I read you?
I'm Fred.
Oh,
Robert's rules.
Are you sure?
I'm Fred.
There's not a hardcore rule here. This is, you can do it one and the same.
Okay, so I do have a couple of comments to
Except
make.
that Lynn was just about to speak.
Yes, no, I know. I'm just letting you
Okay.
know. I'm waiting my turn. I'm in the queue.
I feel like I jumped ahead of everyone. So I think it might be helpful, and there was somebody who made a comment about the waterfront access, and that's one of those things that I think has been frustrating for us, because what we really heard loud and clear from every single person who talked about it was that we wanted to be able to have waterfront access, and when it came down to it, it seemed like we had, based on our conversations with the city attorney, we weren't able to have the access that we really wanted. And so I wonder if we could just, if it's helpful, Jenna or Mark, to just kind of review that process for the group. Yeah.
So do you mean the public input process?
Yes.
Or?
No, the actual change when we made the modification in our recommendation for the waterfront access.
Why we did that, what the motivation was, and the legal reasons, right?
Yeah.
Sure. So it became more clear with speaking with the attorney that to outright require an easement could be determined as what's called a taking of property, which is the government requiring property without compensation, which is something that cities definitely want to avoid. So in reviewing that further and receiving the legal opinion from the attorney, Planning Commission ultimately decided that indeed we should not go forward with what could potentially by the court be determined a taking, and instead should try to meet the intent in a different way. And so many different conversations were had among staff, among consultants, among the attorney, with the planning commissioners, where different alternatives were proposed. And in the end, the one that's on the table, which the attorney says is less likely to be determined as a taking. I mean, again, it's dependent on the situation. It's dependent on what judge the city goes in front of, but he felt more comfortable with this than with outright requiring it, which would be to incentivize the providing an access, a pathway, by allowing for an additional height maximum and no requirement in terms of where buildings are placed. So being that the intent is to not necessarily provide direct access to Lake Macatawa, because that would be by way of, like a boat launch or a swimming pool, joint, or, a swimming hole. But rather to allow for the views of Lake Macatawa, where in the residential areas along the lake, that's not provided. You only have street ends that don't offer any connectivity or real access or view shed to be able to experience the lake from the public's public realm. So what this is doing is also taking into consideration that if there are buildings, say in downtown, that can go up to 6 stories in height, which is what the proposed height requirement in downtown is, then those upper stories, that more people could be able to have views of the lake from those upper stories, since the requirement would be that if you do not propose a access easement with the development, that your building height would have to be lower. So then again, so then the views are being able to be seen from higher story buildings. You don't have a full 6 stories, so then that's cutting off view. Plus the situation orientation of buildings on the site would mean that there would be a minimum of 60 feet in between buildings if a pathway is not proposed, so that there again could be views from Pine to the lake. That is not something that is required in any way now. And as was the case from the beginning, all industrial properties are exempt from this requirement, being that we all saw the safety issues that would result in having someone walk through an industrial property.
Jenna. Any other questions, Lynn? You're good. Okay.
Thank you, Jenna.
Okay.
I've got a lot to say if nobody else does.
I have,
Yes,
I don't know whether this fits into this section or not, but I have 2 proposed changes to the Udo. And one is, I think, quite simple. Is this a good time to bring this up? There is a section on our agenda that says, that invites commissioners to bring anything else up about the Udo.
Go for it, Fred.
So here I go. First of all, the first one is I think kind of a simple one, and that is under the table of contents, when you get to the zone districts themselves, I think it would be really helpful if we would include the acronym for each of the zone districts, because we are constantly talking about LDR and TNR and so forth, but the acronyms aren't listed there on the table of contents. And so I recommend that, for example, it currently reads low density residential zone district. I recommend that it says LDR : low density residential zone district. So people who are hearing these acronyms can find that zone district either by knowing its full name or its acronym. So that's one suggestion I have to make.
Okay.
My second one is something that I've talked about before, and I think we just ran out of time because we never really got to discuss this as a planning commission, and that is the criteria, planning commission approval criteria for rezonings. We now have the criteria that is listed in the Udo, and I think that's great that we've gone so far as to actually insert it into the code. and it exists in section 12.10.c. And it says that there are 6 different criteria that the Planning Commission should look at when agreeing or recommending a rezoning, or an applicant, approving the rezoning for the applicant. And they are things that I think you've all seen in Jenna's write-ups when we have had, oh, here we go. That's great. Thank you, Jenna. Oh, that's 12.10C.
I've got it up, Jenna, if you want me to put it on the screen.
Okay, that would be great. My links aren't working, so.
So while Chris is doing that, I'll just continue to talk.
So right here, that's what you're talking about.
Right here, yeah, those are the ones right there. And so you can kind of read through them. They should be familiar because they're the ones that we've been using to recommend a rezoning. And the attitude that I have about rezonings is that I think there is some merit. When we hear neighbors complain that a rezoning is taking place and when they bought their property, they thought that things would remain the same. But in fact, rezoning does take place, and it's kind of a shock to people who are living nearby a rezoning, especially if it's a rezoning about something that they don't like, or if it's a abrupt change to the zone designation. And so I think I think we have to listen to those people. I think people who get their nearby properties rezoned, I think it can be abrupt and harmful and hurtful to them. And so I think that their voices need to be recognized in this process as well. And so I think that we should have something in here that reflects or gives nearby residents or people in the nearby neighborhood some standing in this discussion about whether we should approve a rezoning or not. And so I have written down something that I saw somewhere else, and it says this would be item number 7 in here. And the language, of course, can be changed if somebody doesn't like this language, but I recommend that we say something like this. The potential impact of the proposed zoning upon the immediate neighborhood, including potential noise and environmental impacts and street and pedestrian systems, will be minimal. So it basically says that the impact of the proposed zoning upon the immediate neighborhood will be minimal. And I think that residents in the city have that right to expect that if something is going to be rezoned, that the impact of that rezoning to the immediate neighborhood should be minimal. It shouldn't be large, and it shouldn't impact their neighborhood enormously or harmfully. And so I think that's the one thing, the one criteria that's missing from this list is that we don't have a way of protecting nearby neighborhood, the neighborhood in a rezoning. Not protected absolutely. I mean, it's still the way that I have it written, still it leaves it up to the judgment of the Planning Commission to determine whether the proposed zoning change has a minimal impact or not. So there can be a discussion about it, but it urges the Planning Commission to, well, of course, they're not the ones, it's the City Council that does it, but the Planning Commission to recommend using this criteria that would include something to minimize the impact on the nearby neighborhood. And that's my proposal to all of you.
Thanks, Fred.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about that?
I would affirm that.
Dear colleagues, what do you think about that?
I would affirm that, actually.
Would you? I mean, I think we've had several cases where we've had a potential rezoning and nearby neighbors have really voiced a concern that they never thought this would happen. And while your zone district can change, City Council has that right to change it. I think you also have a reasonable expectation that things aren't going to change in a way that is harmful to you or has a very detrimental effect on your neighborhood.
Well, I think that the problem there though lies in the vagueness, right? Like if we say, what is their neighborhood? So there are people that lived a mile away from the gas station on Lincoln and 31 saying that was going to negatively affect their neighborhood when they were very far away from that gas station. So I have a gas station that's 100 feet away from my house. And so I have a problem with the vagueness of it. What is a negative impact, you know?
Yeah, but look, Brooke, look at some of the other language that we have. The proposed zone district is consistent with the trends in land development in the general vicinity of the property. I mean, we live with that vagueness. That's why it always calls upon our judgment to interpret whether this is true or not. In fact, all of the criteria are very vague, and all it does is promote a discussion with us about whether, you know, whether these things are glaringly difficult or not, or shouldn't happen because of these reasons. We do actually have standards for what is a neighborhood, what's in a neighborhood. You know, in the Board of Appeals, we often have to rely on something that is, whether it's a quarter mile or whether it's, you know, it's usually some district factor. This definitely includes the next door neighbor, which nobody would argue shouldn't be included. But yeah, there's a limit to it. But I think in the discussions that we've had in the Board of Appeals, we generally can tell whether somebody is 2 miles or 1 mile away or whether they're down the street. You know,
so we would notice for these kind of things, and that's when the neighbors would be able to come in, and the assessment's always done whether it would negatively impact, isn't it?
No, not that it negatively impact. I mean, that's what you have, the criteria right in front of you, and there isn't a criteria there that reflects this. Okay. That it will have a negative impact on the nearby neighborhood. And I think it's a good thing to put in. It certainly is in other cities' criteria because that's what I reviewed. So
this is two things actually. One is the staff. I mean, in my opinion, I don't have an issue with that. We already have an application that that applicants need to fill out, and on that application, that is one of the questions. Will there be a detriment to properties adjacent to you or something to that effect?
Yeah.
That's not in the code. It is what staff reviews, and staff provides their recommendation as to whether or not we think that it would be a detriment. But if Planning Commission wants to have that in the actual ordinance, again, to Fred's point, it is all very subjective. It's you know, I personally don't see an issue with it. The other thing that I want to just mention is that unfortunately we are going to lose Chris Corey from our meeting right now. Maybe he'll be able to come back in a half hour. That was the thought.
That is the hope. Yep.
If we're still here in a half hour. So, but I just wanted to thank him for everything and let you all know why you won't see him on the call.
Thank you guys, and good work, everyone, and good luck with the rest of your discussion, or at least the next half hour of it. And if you're still on at around 7:30, I will be back.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
And my thought on Fred's feedback was I was going to ask staff what they thought in terms of if staff is able to provide a direction to what a minimal impact is. So I heard Jenna say she doesn't think they already asked for this and this would be okay. So I don't see an issue with, I guess, inserting it if it makes sense.
Yeah, so I don't know about the language minimal impact. I mean, obviously you're required to have a public hearing, so that in and of itself says you know the public ought to have be able to comment and convey to you what they think about the rezoning. So, I mean, and you ought to take that seriously. Minimal impact is not a very high threshold. So, I mean, if there is more than a minimal impact, then I suppose, you would have to not allow it, or it would be a request, or the decision would be to not approve the rezoning. So, I mean, I don't know if there's some different language, that might have a higher bar. Because like I say, minimal impact, I mean, that minimal impact could mean a lot to a lot of different people, and that's a pretty low bar.
I'm curious about whether.
Look at the other, let me just answer, Mark, assume just a minute, Nathan. The other ones are pretty much the same thing. The proposed zone district is consistent with the trends in land development. Well, that's really, that's whether it's consistent or not consistent with land development is really a hard thing to determine. I think what it does is it gives the staff, Jenna pretty much follows the criteria when she does the staff write-up. And once we get to the staff recommendation on the rezoning, she goes right down the list and says whether staff thinks it is or not. And that's why I would just like to include this and let staff have their chance to look at it and to recommend to the planning commission whether that's true or not. And then we can have the right to discuss this or not. But I think it's missing in our criteria. The ability for us to say, well, this is quite an abrupt and difficult change, and it's right in the nearby neighborhood. And I think there is some bearing to people saying that, they never thought this would change as dramatically. And we've seen this happen. And we've been faced with this problem before. So that's really what this is. I'm sorry.
I hear where you're going. I guess I would potentially suggest maybe tweaking the language a little bit to say, that the rezoning would not, provide any detrimental impact or something like that on the neighborhood, because that's a little higher bar, or denotes a little higher bar than saying minimal impact. Because like I say, what is minimal impact? I mean, is that a 2% increase in vehicle traffic? Is it a 20% increase? I think that people might be able to better ascertain what something, if something is detrimental to neighbors versus minimal impact. So, but that's just my opinion.
Well, your opinion is important. So I am happy to, I'm just making this available to all of us to consider. I feel maybe stronger than other people do that this is a pretty important issue for us to look at when we consider a rezoning.
Yeah, all of the lawyer red flags in my office are shooting up all over the place on this. I'm really concerned about making that kind of change without having the city attorney take a look at the language first, because I would hate for us to approve something that Ron would then later say, oh, no, language like that is going to tie you up in this way or that. I don't know if there's anything out there like that, but I'm really nervous about doing something like that without having Ron take a look at it first.
I would agree.
Remember that none of this has been in the code before. This does not exist in the code. Every one of these is going in for the first time.
But city attorneys had a chance to take a look at the language that's in front of us now, but not.
I have no objection to having Ron. I mean, I'm not being that forceful with this. I think it's something we've overlooked. So
and a recommendation, or as a recommendation, could you say a condition would be for staff to review options for adding something into Udo, that would cover that.
Yeah.
The general statement. And by Ron, I mean our city attorney, so that we can, further that discussion and add it if Ron is comfortable with that.
Okay.
If other planning commissioners are also in agreement with that.
I don't have any problem with staff looking into it and having Ron take a look and get back to us on it, but I would not be willing to vote for it today without hearing that first.
Okay, so it would be number 5, and it would say review criteria for rezonings to include impact on nearby neighborhood, a review of it.
Well, so if the mayor's not comfortable though with it, with some actual text being amended in Udo, then my recommendation would be to wait and bring it back subsequently after Udo is adopted.
Is that what was
We
said?
can do that too.
That's what the mayor said.
That's the mayor's shaking, the mayor's nodding his head, Jenna, yes. I'll lean in more. Yes.
Now, that doesn't mean that Fred can't make a motion.
No, exactly. But I'll be honest with you, Fred. I don't want to add that kind of language to the Udo at this point. I don't have a problem with there being a recommendation to staff to review possible language with the city attorney without putting actual language in that's going to become part of the Udo. But I'm not sure that even this is the place for that amendment to go, because I would like what we send to city council to be as clean and complete as possible. We can make a recommendation then for other things, other changes that may happen down the road. But I don't want to put, hey, let's take a look at this particular language or that particular language. The first 4 things that we talked about in the study session, we've got pretty set things in, with the exception of that policy piece for the decibel level. But we didn't have and I think you were against the specific, some change in specific numbers on the decimal level because we didn't have a basis for it. I kind of feel the same way about this, that I don't have a background, I don't have a basis, I don't feel like we've done the research on that particular language. So I would not be in favor of including particular language. I don't have a problem with instructing staff to look at that as a possibility for adding to criteria at some point in the future, but I'm not sure it needs to be part of Udo.
Anybody else have any comments? I'm sorry, Brooke. Anybody else have any comments?
I'd agree with the mayor on that too, Fred. I like what you said, but I agree it's going to get muddy and sticky at this point. And like everybody else has said, we can change this and add to it at a later date as well.
I just want more review. That's all.
Okay.
I think you have a good point though, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I've said enough. Okay, let's keep going.
Any other
The table of contents thing, absolutely. We've been working through some issues with the consultant as to how to make it so that the acronym can be in the table of contents, but
Yeah.
doesn't have to be in the title of the article, because then it's like double putting it there because we already have the acronyms on the top right. Anyway, technical issues, but that will be resolved. Thank you.
Yeah.
10 years from now, you won't need it. For now, it should be there.
Mhm. Yeah, I like the idea of making it as clear as possible, but that's not really a substantive change. That's just that's a formatting change.
Right.
Yeah. All right, I got a bunch to say. All right. I feel bad Chris left because Chris was part of my initial thank you. I want to thank all of you guys, all of the planning commissioner staff. I want to thank Chris. I started this process only about halfway through the 2.5 years that you guys have been working on this. I can't imagine thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I'm only halfway now. So thank you to all of you who've been involved, and especially everybody who's been here since day one. You guys are good people doing hard work. You are incredibly patient, and your dedication to this process has been amazing. So from the mayor, thank you. Also, I wanted to thank staff for the great executive summary that was part of the packet and the presentation that you did today. I kind of laughed when I thought executive summary because it's 27 pages long, which is just an example of how far we've done and all of the great work that's been done with this. And also, I don't think we've given nearly enough credit to the public for their involvement in this process. This has been an incredible example of citizen engagement. One of City Council's goals is to try to involve the community in the process, to listen to the community, to get them involved in what's going on in local government. And I think that this process has been an incredible example of that. We as Planning Commission and staff, we worked really hard to publicize. I loved the list in the executive summary of all of the different ways that we tried to get the public involved in the process because we wanted that public input. And while the current draft of the Udo might not be exactly what each and every one of those commenters that we've heard from may want, believe me, Planning Commission has been listening to what the public has been saying. As members of the public, you have been heard, and significant changes have occurred to the Udo language as a direct result of what we have heard from the public. And we as Planning Commission have received a lot of communication and comments as a group. I also get all of the ones that come to City Council. I also get all of the ones that are directed to the mayor. I kind of chuckled when I think I saw in the executive summary, 700 and some comments that we've received. I think I've received that many in the last month. It's amazing. I try to respond to as many of them as I can, but wow, has the public been involved in this process. And I think that that's a great thing. There are three issues that I hear over and over again from the public. And I think each one of them is a great example of what this Planning Commission has done to respond to that public comment. The first one has to do with the neighborhood that I'm sitting in right now, the Central Park neighborhood. When we talked to them earlier this year, I remember the meeting that almost everybody's face on the screen or name on the screen was somebody from the Central Park neighborhood who was adamantly against the proposals that we were putting on the table for Central Park. After great work with the staff and a small group of people from the Central Park neighborhood, we were able to come together with what I think is a really good compromise. It's not exactly what either side wanted, but that's the way this process is supposed to work. And I think if you walked around and asked most of the folks that live in the Central Park neighborhood right now, they would be in favor of the language for Udo that directly impacts the Central Park residents. We've been hearing a lot from the folks in the LDR, the low density residential district. People need to remember, we did initially propose duplexes in LDR. That was part of that early language that was there. But after we received significant input from the public in December and January, Planning Commission made big revisions to what we'd said with the LDR Zone District. We heard that residents were concerned about outside developers coming in and buying up a bunch of properties and developing into multifamily units across LDR. So we added an owner occupancy requirement for accessory dwelling units. And as Mark said, we've currently got an effective system to enforce owner occupancy, one through the requirement that they come before us, but also we are able to enforce owner occupancy through homestead property tax qualification. You know, you've got to live in your home in order to qualify for the homestead property tax. And believe me, I have clients who move out of their homes and go into places like Freedom Village and their home is now sitting vacant. The city knows. I get clients who call me all the time saying, how did the city find out that I'm no longer living in my home? I'm like, I don't know how they're sniffing it out, but they know. The city's able to keep track of those kinds of things. And there is a great enforcement process that's there to enforce that owner occupancy of those units. In addition, we as Planning Commission made the recommendation that the attached ADUs be a third or less the size of the primary dwelling unit. When members of the public were concerned about ADUs being built without neighbors having advance notice, we added language to require public notice, the same as we do with zoning changes and the right to request a special exception public hearing. So all of those changes came as a direct result of public comment that we received. And as many of the people that are attending this meeting already know, but members of the public might not know, detached accessory dwelling units have been allowed in the city of Holland for about 5 years. And in that time, there's only been a handful that have been created. Last number I heard was 5. 5 across the entire city. And my understanding is none of them are currently rentals. So if there is a fear out there in the public that all of a sudden, all of these houses in your neighborhood are going to get accessory dwelling units, or are going to be converted into conversion ADUs, or they're going to be more detached accessory dwelling units, the numbers simply do not bear that out. This is a very niche, this is a very small solution for a very niche group of people, people who want a mother-in-law apartment, people who want to have the opportunity for a disabled family member to live in that home with them, or maybe the opportunity for a young couple who wants to buy that first home but can't afford the mortgage on the full property, gives them the opportunity to provide some rental income. But that owner occupancy requirement will prevent developers from doing it. It will eliminate the problems that we have with absentee landlords. There will be pride in ownership. There will be connections to the neighborhoods. This is exactly the kind of thing that people have been asking for. And all of these changes were made as a direct result to Planning Commission listening to and hearing what the public had to say. The third and final one is the TRN Zone District, and Planning Commission also made very significant changes in this neighborhood based directly on public comment. The very first draft that I recall talking about with this is that out of, and I have memorized these numbers because I've been repeating them to people over and over again. There are 2,872 properties in the TRN zoning district. Right now, 171 of those 2,872 properties could be duplexes. Of that 171, I believe only 30 of them are actually duplexes. The first proposal that this Planning Commission put out was to increase that number from 171 to 881. Well, right now, we have made the change as a direct result to change that from 881 possible duplex properties to 248. Right now, there are 7% of the properties in TRN that could be duplexes, but only 1% are. That first 881 number would have allowed 38% of the properties in TRN to potentially be duplexes. Not be duplexes, but potentially be duplexes. And remember, of that 171, only 30 are duplexes. Under the proposed change, 248 could be duplexes. If the numbers stay the same, if the ratios stay the same, we would move from 30 duplexes out of 2,872 properties to 44 duplexes out of 2,872 properties. That's an increase from 1% duplexes to 1.5% duplexes. That is not going to be a significant, dramatic change to any neighborhood. And as one commenter said today, and I was listening, I would listen to every single one of them today. As one commenter said today, a lot of the properties that are duplexes and multifamily units in TRN right now could not be duplexes or multifamily units under the Udo language that we're proposing. They've been grandfathered in from previous older language. This is still very restrictive language that we're talking about. The Planning Commission has been listening to the public. We heard the public and we made significant changes as a result. I am so proud of the work that has been done by this Planning Commission, by the staff and by the consultant. So Chris, if you're not able to be on screen, I still see your box there. If you're listening, thank you, Chris. Thank you for your patience with us. Thank you for your ability to get great numbers to us. Thank you, staff, for being able to answer questions on the fly and be able to work through this. And especially, I want to thank the residents of Holland. I have been involved in local government for decades. I do not think I have ever heard of even 14 people showing up for a zoning meeting. We had a meeting with 144 people showing up. That's a testament to the people of Holland. That is a testament to their involvement, their engagement, and their love of their community and their concern that things get done right. But it's also a testament to the Planning Commission and to the staff. We invited that public comment. We welcomed that public comment. We reached out to the community and we asked them to comment. When we were a year ago doing these meetings, when there weren't a lot of people here, we said we need to get more people involved in this process. So we sent out postcards. We didn't have to send out postcards. We weren't required to send out postcards. We did that because we wanted public engagement. And you know what? It worked. We got the public engagement that we wanted. We got the public comment that we wanted. And as a direct result of that, I believe that we have a proposed Udo that reflects the wide range of voices, the broad range of people in this community, the wants and desires of the broad spectrum of the people in this community. If you're attending this meeting or if you're watching it later, and even if this current Udo language does not meet exactly what you would like to see, please know your voice has been heard, and the Planning Commission has made changes to the Udo as a result of what you have asked us to do. Is it perfect? Nope, it isn't. Is it exactly what I want? Nope, it isn't. There are lots of things I would like to see in here, but part of this process is compromise. And one of the great things about this Planning Commission is we work really well together and are able to compromise on things and talk things through and make decisions. I don't think anybody who's sitting around the table today thinks that this Udo is exactly like what they would want to see. And are we going to likely make changes to it in the future? Yeah, certainly we're going to do that because it's going to be a living document in the future. We're going to find places that we can make it better as things go on. But I do believe that this is a reflection of the goals of the 2017 master plan. I think it reflects the initial goals of the Udo and the Udo process. And I think that it reflects not only the results of the citizen survey, but what the people of Holland as a whole want. So when a proposal is made for the language that's here, it's going to get my vote. So that's all I have to say.
I think one thing that I would add to that, because that was pretty eloquent, was that we also did not vote on it at an earlier time. We listened to the public as well on that, and we pushed it off to reevaluate a few more things. So
yeah, I saw a comment from one of those early outreach sessions back last January, over a year ago, where somebody asked the question as to when they thought that it would come before council. And the thought at that time that it was going to come before council last summer, that council would be seeing it. It's been a full year longer than was anticipated to be just 14, 16 months ago.
mm-hmm. Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this, that's for sure. Anyone else?
Are you ready for a motion?
Oh, I don't know, Fred. Almost 7:30. Are you sure?
Only been 3 years.
Thanks, Andy.
Yep.
Well, I would like to make a motion unless somebody else would prefer to do it.
Jump on it, Fred. Jump on it.
Go for it, Fred.
I make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the Unified Development Ordinance to the City Council, conditioned on staff making changes to the Udo as directed by us today regarding bicycle standards, form-based codes, structures below 500 square feet, the stray cat numbers, and the property at 164 West 7th Street regarding the maintained as industrial.
Does that give you what you guys need? Is that enough clarity based on what we talked about at the study session?
Yeah, perhaps if you could just reference the document that we used to indicate that. So it was the study session outline, just for the record.
I mean, the 5 items in the outline.
Well, the study session record minus the the study session agenda minus the decibel information as was written.
Okay, can somebody copy that down as part of my motion?
It's recorded. It's being
Okay.
recorded. So
We'll include that, Jenna. Thank you.
If that's what you need, I will support that motion.
Go ahead.
We need a roll call vote on this, Mallory.
Perfect. All right. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Box,
Yes.
Owens.
Yes.
DeBlock,
Yes.
Raymond, Lozano,
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Blunt.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Whoo!
Excellent work,
Ooh,
everybody.
work, everyone.
Awesome work.
Where's the balloons?
Yeah.
You can put on your screen. Anyway, whew. All right, do I get to move on to communications and petitions?
You do.
Ew.
Wow. Scheduling of public hearings.
None at this time.
Communications from commission members?
I have something.
You do, Fred?
Yes, I do. I've been on the Planning Commission since February 7 of 2018. And I have observed and participated in the development Udo since the first meeting that came up. And Jenna has impressed all of us with her diligent and professional performance over 3 years. And I move that the Planning Commission officially commend Jenna for her work. Brooke, Mark, and I wrote a letter of commendation for Jenna that we would like to read into the record.
All right.
Yeah.
I have that letter. The Planning Commission of the City of Holland, Michigan wants to commend you, Jenna, for your excellent work in leading a team to revise the zoning code for the city government and the citizens of Holland. For the past 3 years, you have directed the work through all of the important phases of the project, developing the scope of work, selecting and managing a team of consultants, working stepwise through reviewing and revising each part of the code, coordinating the efforts with city departments, designing and implementing an extensive public outreach process, and guiding the Planning Commission through all the important steps in order to recommend the new zoning code to the City Council for final approval. Your efforts have resulted in a unified development code that, 1, implements the new master plan for the City of Holland by developing zoning standards for the goals and action steps in the master plan. 2, brings together all regulatory codes pertaining to zoning, streets and sidewalks, and subdivision and tree ordinances into one unified regulatory document. 3, implements a form-based code for all parts of the city where the preservation of the character of those areas is paramount. And 4, promotes mixed-use development throughout the neighborhoods and corridors in the city. Taken together, these elements make the city's development process more transparent and predictable, reinforce and strengthen those places and aspects of Holland that make it such a wonderful place to live for all residents, and better prepare the city government and citizens of Holland to address new development challenges in the years to come. On a more personal level, your work with Planning Commission members has been exemplary. Over these 3 years, your efforts have helped create mutual respect and rapport among commissioners. Your patience, persistence, listening skills, and moments of levity, professional knowledge, and prudent recommendations have enabled us to make the best decisions for our community. For this, Jenna, we express our deep appreciation for your efforts.
Hear, hear.
Thank you so very much. I really couldn't have done it without all of you. So thank you to everybody. And it's been quite a journey, and it's still continuing. And it's really been an honor. I've learned so much. I really have gained so much from it. So thank you for that opportunity.
So that was a motion, and I'm looking
Support.
Here we have a support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, everybody applaud.
Hey.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and that has to go on the official record of Jenna's career.
It's already in her record. It's in her file. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I do have to say, I remember back when Jenna was interviewing for this job, we had a discussion then, I think, of this process as I was starting to think about it even then. And Jenna was just like, she was so eager to get into it. And she just kind of had it all mapped out in her mind already, how you know, we ought to do this process. And, you know, that's coming up on 4 years ago now, and it's taken a long time, but, you know, we entrusted her with this whole process, and I said, Jenna, you got to be the point person on this. And she never shirked from it. She was in there tenacious, and I just really, really applaud her for sticking to it, and you know, through thick and thin. And you've done a wonderful job, Jenna, and thank you so much.
Well, and as a mom, I have to say, she also had a baby during all of this.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And COVID.
And COVID. on top of it. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, at some point we have to recognize how Chris Corey has assisted us as well, and how he's gone way past his contract. Just continued to be there every time anybody asked for any help. And so, and maybe this isn't the moment, but he really needs to be recognized somehow also. But for now, it's you, Jenna.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Any other communications from commission members?
Yeah, I got one item. I'd like to make a plug to those listening interested in Udo. We got a couple spots coming up on the Planning Commission. So if you're interested, do apply. You can find the application just by Googling like how to apply for boards and commissions in the city of Holland. And if that doesn't work, just bug someone at City Hall and they can point you there. But yeah, with that, this is actually my last meeting as I'm moving next month before the next meeting. So it's been a really great experience working with you all. And yeah, I've grown a lot, and want to thank staff for putting up with my dumb questions and giving me a shot to be on this commission.
Well, your lighting expertise definitely helped as well.
I know,
Yeah, no, that was fun.
I don't know who's gonna carry the lighting weight now.
I know.
Oh, Andrew, you're going to have to teach me.
Give me a call anytime.
I need engineering, 101 on lighting.
Yes, you're still very accessible. You still be in the US, so.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, my email and phone number isn't changing.
We're gonna miss you, Andrew.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
Yes,
Yeah, we
so,
hope that
Andrew,
take
thank
care.
you for all of your contributions. Absolutely.
Have some safe travels.
Yeah. Well, what a note to end on, right?
You know, we
Any
passed it tonight, so yes.
Any other commission members? No? Communications from staff?
I would just, no, go ahead. I was just gonna say, so I really want to thank Mallory too for diligently doing all the behind the scenes stuff at all of our planning commission meetings, and making these Zoom meetings work, and diligently, supporting Jenna in her wonderful way of making sure the packets and through this whole process and everything gets to you hopefully seamlessly. And Mallory's done just a bang up job too with that. So just want to recognize her effort in that too. So thanks, Mal.
Thank you, Mallory.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to second that entire, all of the public comments she's gone through, she's analyzed it all. She provided all of that report. That's a huge undertaking and a very important undertaking. So thank you so much for that. And really, really, really have helped me in so many countless ways. So I thank you. And I thank Mark for his, direction, and for always, helping me figure things out, and certainly for all of his knowledge about the city of Holland. I mean, that's been crucial in this process, and in my job in general. So, but thank you, Mark. And I don't know why I'm using this time as like a, speech, but I just feel very much, in gratitude to everybody that's been working on this project. And I really do think that we have a great document to move forward to the next step to city council. So I would love planning commissioners if you can, keep in tune with the study sessions. I'm also going to see if perhaps we could even have a joint meeting as we start helping city council understand what all is in here. And certainly, of course, we'll rely on the mayor and Lynn as well. So, but thank you, and thank you to the public. Thank you also to Chris. I guess he's not going to be able to come back in time, but this has been a great process. So, and it continues on. So more to come.
All right. Well, both the staff have spoken. So now that it's 7:35, we can adjourn. Motion for adjournment?
Well, do you need the motion or do you just declare us adjourned?
No, we need a motion. It's
I
official.
think Andrew ought to make the motion.
What?
I think Andrew ought to make the motion.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, wave frantically at the camera. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Have a good night.
You too.